And we are now broadcasting. Or at least it should be. And fingers, toes, and everything crossed that this time it doesn't crash. So I'm going to try resuming from the progress data, which is something I've never tried before. For those who don't know what happened last time or didn't see this last time, we were literally halfway through the race. I've, like I just said, never done this before, so I think you restart from the pit. So it's saying lap 88. So what happened the first time around? Oh, that's interesting. So it hasn't restarted from the pits. Okay. Unless this is how it's supposed to happen. Whatever. Maybe I just misread it or something. But yeah, we were in the middle of the race, literally halfway through the endurance, and then somebody just said the stream's lagging, and then next thing I know, nobody's watching it, stream's crashed for no apparent reason. Tried to stream again, and it says, oh, you can't stream from your region of the world. Like, what are you talking about? Then it says, oh, we're doing server maintenance. I thought, great, that's just my luck. And so I tried again, managed to get it to work. 28 minutes later, it crashes again, and I thought, you know what, we can't be turning this into a 15-part episode, so I'll just forget it for now, do it again next week. So hopefully today we'll now actually be able to do this properly. I don't know how the weather's going to change. That's interesting. So the weather's about the same. That's cool. But obviously the cars are a bit spaced closer together now. I noticed on replay that it seems like the car volume versus voice volume might be a little bit too high on the car, but I don't really hear anyone ever say that, so I guess it's okay for you. And right before doing this, I've actually done exactly what I said I was going to do, which is clipped out part from what's now part 1 of this endurance race, which was my concise review of the power pack as a whole, and ended up being just over 6 minutes. So as far as reviews go, obviously I should try to make it longer than that, because you don't get double ads until over 8-minute videos, but again, that's the problem with my content. I guess I try to make content that actually helps people rather than just, you know, whatever length we can go for. What F1 car do I think PD would add? Why December? Was that like a... Are you thinking of like the Spec 3 kind of situation? I don't really know. I think for me personally, I guess I've got two answers. Which one do I think would be most likely versus which one would I actually like if that were to happen? If we're going to go fictional, because let's be honest, that's probably what it's going to be if we do get another Formula car at this point, because they do occasionally do the licensed ones, but not very much. I would say the likely option would be some kind of, essentially what I did for April Fool's Day, which is an updated Formula Gran Turismo. That's what I would think would probably happen. And it could be based on like the V6 hybrid era, it could be more like the old school Formula GT with like a 900 horsepower, what was that, V10, V12, whatever it was at the time. It could be some kind of riff on like the Ferrari F10, I personally quite like that. So I'd say it's probably something like that, because if you think about it, they've done a few of the retro-styled Grand Prix cars at this point. I don't know, I don't really feel like... I don't know, I guess me being not the biggest of F1 fans, I'm not the best person to ask on that, because there are plenty of cars that people would say, oh, actually, we love this one from the 80s, and that one from the 90s, and this one from here, and that one from there. But it seems almost like they're trying to hit on some of the major bases from different eras, which is why I say Formula GT. If it were me, though, what I would actually like to see, even as a non-huge F1 fan, I'd like to see some 70s style in there, you know, like where all the cars were like wedge-shaped and had huge snorkel intakes, giant rear wheels, tiny front wheels, and like arrow-shaped rear wings. I just love that kind of stuff, like late 70s even, like around the Brabham fan car era. I'd love to see something like that in there, because there'd be a totally different kind of challenge. The aero was advanced, obviously, for the time, but by today's standards it would be super, or it should be, super challenging to drive. And visually speaking, there's just so many replicas you could do. You could have different, like, bodywork, like you said, with the Lotus 79, you could do the Brabham, you could do Lotus, you could do so many different teams, so many different colours. they'd look awesome in photo mode. It'd be so much fun to use cars from that kind of era, I think. Maybe even early 80s, but I'm thinking more so probably mid to late 70s. For me, Grand Prix interests me more, I guess, the older back you go, with my favourite Grand Prix car being technically a car which was way, way before Formula 1. I've talked about it before, the Trossi Monaco, which is also probably the weirdest Grand Prix car ever. An aero engine, front-wheel drive, 75% of its weight over the front end, so handled like absolute garbage. But, you know, once you get back to that kind of era, almost like the Mercedes and Audi or Auto Union Silver Arrows, that kind of thing, where you almost don't really even think of them as Grand Prix cars. They're more like just streamliners, but they kind of were Grand Prix back then. I like that kind of era because aside from games like Forza here and there, but even more so like Toca Race Driver would randomly have stuff like that in there back on the PS2. But Gran Turismo, for some strange reason, they've never really shown much interest in the early days of Grand Prix. I mean, yeah, I guess the Bugatti is technically a Grand Prix car, wouldn't it be? Yeah, and that ties into what I was just saying, that, yeah, I would love that, because, yeah, that would tie into exactly what I said. And I'm pretty sure I have said that out of all the vehicles that are on the data mining list, that Bugatti is the one that I'm most excited for. I still forgot that it was on there, but yeah, I'd really love to see that. And I love to see it, or I would love to see it, for basically the same reason why I love stuff like the Lamborghini Urus being added to the game. And that is that even though I'm not a massive fan of the Urus, in real life I don't pay much attention to one when I see it on the road. But in the game, I like it because it's different. It's something genuinely different to just another Lamborghini, you know? And like with McLaren, I would much rather have like a 70s McLaren Grand Prix car than, I don't know, a Senna or something. And I know I'm the odd one out there because most players, especially younger players, would love a Senna, what was the one that I predicted? The one that looks like the VGT? Is it the Solara? Whatever it's called. The Solus, that's the one. I think most people probably choose something like that, but for me it's too samey. So I like the fact that if that Bugatti is brought back, that would be such a different Bugatti to what we've got. You know, it's totally different to a Veyron, a Chiron, the Vision GT. It's wildly different to them. I'd love an EB110 as well, but a Type 35 would be pretty cool. Probably not the most useful thing around because it doesn't really have any natural rivals, but pretty cool nonetheless. And I have to say, it was, aside from the crash of the stream, a pretty smooth experience actually doing this, going back into it. That's funny, somebody else saying about the F1 car as well. 70s, I mean, yeah, it's basically what I was just saying, yeah. There are tons of Grand Prix cars that I'm not even familiar with, like the one you mentioned, the Di Tommaso. I'd probably know it if I saw it, but not being a massive Grand Prix fan, and certainly not a massive Formula 1 fan, there are huge gaps in my knowledge for teams and cars like that. It's just never really interested me, for the same reason why I don't watch most motorsport, especially now, and that is that I'm just not really a fan of motorsport when all the cars kind of feel and look and sound not the same, but basically the same. You know, it's why I don't really follow NASCAR, I don't really follow IndyCar, because they're all very deliberately the same kind of platform, what would the word be? The same kind of, I don't know. I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of. Like the same kind of restrictions, you know? But certain restrictions are much more strict than others. Whereas if you compare that to LMP1, you could have the Aston Lola, an Audi R10, a Peugeot 908, and they were all really different, even within the same rulebook. You can have a diesel, a big V12, an open-top car, a closed-top car, even within LMP1. Or if you look back to the 60s and 70s with something like Can-Am, those cars were all over the place. You'd have something like a Chaparral with about 670 horses and a fan system, but then you'd have Porsche in the 70s with no fan system, open top, and 1,500 brake horsepower. So yeah, all over the place. I love that kind of thing. It's why I like Pikes Peak as well, because that still has that all over the place kind of approach. And it's why Le Mans started to interest me again. There was a good, probably decade or more, where it didn't really interest me. Likewise with Formula 1, like I said, because it just felt very samey. But now that the hypercars are in there and you've got teams coming back, and yeah, it's just more interesting. All of that is a long way to say that I don't recognise the Di Tommaso that you said, but I think you get the idea anyway. It's looking to me like we're not really going to have to worry about any rain at all, perhaps even for the entire race. I thought there was a little bit less of the race to do than there actually was. Not by much. I thought there was about 2 hours and 45 left, Must have been more like just under 3, unless they set it back a little bit. But yeah, the second part of the stream that I did that was just under half an hour, I either privated or unlisted that one because I thought there's no point. Yeah, I don't want to make a part B that's less than half an hour long. It's just stupid. And it's not like you missed anything really. I was mostly just talking to myself about the stream not working properly because it still wasn't working properly. So fingers crossed for today. And I was looking back because I've just restructured the playlist, and looking back it was weird because the only endurance race that I've done so far that went without a hitch was Spa. I did the whole thing, the whole 8 hours in one stream, didn't have to split it up, didn't crash, just worked the whole way through. Obviously for the 24s that was never going to work. I didn't realise that at the time, but those had their own issues. Nürburgring didn't really have any issues, so that was lucky. That was just a 3-parter by design. But being able to get the whole Spa event into one stream, I like that. That scratches my brain in the right way. And obviously that was my plan for this one as well. I wanted it to replace the initial 6-hour video, but oh well. And the way I've done it is I've now gone into the playlist, so the complete Let's Play, including this final race once this is finished. Yeah, I think you were there for most of it, yeah. I've restructured the playlist for the Power Pack now, because every single episode is in there from literally day 1 until now. But I've changed the order so that now it's in the order that I added them. So now it goes literally from episode 1 down. So if somebody's watching it for the first time, it actually makes sense. So it plays through the series in the right order rather than going backwards. One thing I might do after I've added this final race in there is to manually move the 6 individual car reviews, which I've still included in the series because they're a part of the pack for, you know, the Beetle and all that. I might put those to the end so they don't interrupt the flow, but apart from that it's pretty much a finished playlist, I think, which is nice to have it all in one place. If somebody doesn't want to buy it, or if they're just bored and want to put it on the background, they can play through the whole thing. But yeah. And yes, it is cool, Jack. The notification does work now, for a change. It actually came up on my phone, which is quite rare to see, which is nice. Hopefully that'll be a sign for the stream to come, because technically, if the stream lasts for nearly as long as it did last time, we'll basically finish the race, but it would be annoying to have to redo it near to the end or have shorter parts, so fingers crossed and hopefully not. But yeah, like I said, I went back to part 1 now and cut out my review, so I think I'll probably schedule the review for maybe Monday. Yeah, probably 7 PM Monday that'll come out. And I know at this point, A, it's not like a huge amount of people are going to watch it, but also of those people who do watch it, you've probably made your mind up if you're going to download the Power Pack, and if you were going to, you probably already have. But I guess for the stragglers, or for people who just want to look back and reminisce on their thoughts, maybe their thoughts before it versus after, which again is part of the benefit of the playthrough, the Let's Play, because you can see my thoughts day 1 versus now, especially now that you can use your own cars like this, which is a massive difference. But yeah, making it into a little 6-minute thing. You know, you've got the whole series if you want to really take a deep dive, the deepest dive there is really, or you can just watch the 6-minute thing and see if it's the right thing for you, which, yeah, I like that way of doing it. So I've got 5.5 laps left. The tyres are fine because those reset. I actually had to go into AI again, ChatGPT, and ask, because I couldn't get an answer online, not a definitive one anyway, that if I do the exit save method, as I did last week for this, can you open up another game, or do you have to go back and finish this? You know, like if you open up another game, does it ruin the save or something? And obviously, thankfully not. But I didn't know that because I'd never tried this before. I know a lot of people use this method just to do the 24-hour races, which makes sense. But yeah, I do hope, and there's more hope than I used to have. I may have even spoken about this before, but I feel like people have asked me before in the Let's Play series, do I think that they'll make future updates to the Power Pack? And this was, of course, before they actually did, so it was still conjecture back then. And we've had, if you think about it, 2 significant updates to the Power Pack. One, I would say, far more significant than the other. By far the most significant, being able to choose your own car. course, massive improvement and one of my biggest gripes about the entire thing, so that's great. And 2, also I'm glad that I did my review after that happened, because it makes a huge difference to the verdict. But the other thing is the weekly challenges, because the weekly challenges ended up being totally different to what I thought. As I said, I thought it was going to be like, do this specific race, do that specific race, and like career mode. I like the fact that it's not, because then it allows the player to choose their path, if you will. Do you want to do 3 endurance races? Do you want to do 3 of the same race, like I did that video for the other day about just using the Veyron, going around Daytona, job done. Literally get all 3 done in under half an hour. You can choose. And I think that's a great update, because it means that you have the replayability, but more importantly, for players who maybe are jumping in for the first time, or maybe, you know, for example, again, to use Ryan as an example, he's now just beginning the journey of going into GT7 on the PS5 instead of the PS4. So he will be doing the Power Pack for the first time, he's got Sophie for the first time, etc, etc. So for him, having the weekly challenge will actually be a great bonus, because, for example, I know there's a couple of the cars that he hasn't bothered buying yet, and that kind of weekly bonus, in addition to the huge money of the Power Pack, it will make a difference for many players, especially when, even for someone like me who's got, you know, 90 plus million now from doing the Power Pack, even I don't really like the idea of spending, like, what is it, 10 million for that McLaren F1 engine swap into the Lexus LFA or whatever. And to be honest, I probably still won't do it, but at least with those kind of insane costs, having the extra bonus every week, it's a nice way of funding that. For me, for example, on week 1, I got, what is it, 100 grand and 200 grand, or is it 200 and 500? I can't remember now. And my 6-star ticket was the Nismo, which I sold for like 1.6 mil or something. But if you combine that with the career mode weekly challenges, that's a pretty nice honeypot to come out with. You got the bonus if you do all 5, which is usually equates to what's that usually, 5, 6, 7, 800 grand at least, even if they only give you credits, plus the events themselves, plus the daily login bonus. And then you've got this, which appears so far to follow pretty much the same structure. They might change it in future, but you got like a 6-star roulette. That alone is usually worth $500,000, even if it's a Vision GT car that you're selling, usually probably more. So yeah, not bad. Not bad. I'd say that those 2 things are very, very significant updates, and definitely improve the quality of life for the Power Pack, and improve my verdict as well. It's not like I give scores to games, I've never done that, but yeah, it's nice to be able to be more positive about it, because of 2 things really. Contrary to what many people, I'm sure, think about me as a Gran Turismo creator, I don't speak Italian. I think that's Italian. I'm guessing compliments on something, and I can see that you're thanking me for something, but I don't know what. But you're welcome and thanks. Grazie. What was I saying? Oh yeah, I'm glad for 2 reasons, really. One, contrary to what people think about me as a creator, I like being positive about Gran Turismo as often as possible. And there are people who will go, really? Really, do you? Because all you seem to do is, you know, critique and criticise Gran Turismo, say what you don't like, what you wish was different. Yes, but the reason for that is because, and you may notice I do it now more than ever, I certainly wasn't doing it a massive amount back in the GT6 days, that's for sure. It's because I believe there's more to critique now than there was ever before. I don't think it's just a coincidence that many people like myself happen to have more problems with Gran Turismo now, but I want to be positive. There's a reason why, after all, I've been playing it since GT2, and I've played every one ever since, and then gone back to 1 as well to a limited degree, and played PSP, and played Tourist Trophy, and even have the Gran Turismo Sport collector's book, and the little collector's car, and everything else, you know, beyond what even some superfans would have in some cases. That indicates, or it should indicate, I kind of like the series, you know, as many of us do. So I like being able to be more positive about it, and these kind of changes are exactly the kind of thing I'd love to see. So either they already had it planned, which I think is probably the case, or they're listening to players. It's polyphony, so I think we know which one of those is more likely. And it's also nice to be able to be positive in order to... I don't even know how to put it, because if I just say it the straight up way, it sounds like more like pandering, but I like being able to be positive in terms of my review of something. And that sounds like I just like to be a yes man, but that's not what it is. Like, if I review a product, for example, I'm rooting for the brand. You know, I want GT7 to be good. I want the products I review to be good. I don't like giving bad reviews to things. So I like being able to recommend something to people. You know, back when I used to do movie reviews, I didn't review movies that I didn't like because I didn't see the point. You know, people already know there's plenty of garbage films out there. They're trying to find good ones. So I would focus on recommending films that people might not have seen before. Improve customization. For all... I can't tell what you were saying at the end, but for all cars, I'm assuming you were going to say. I think customization is always something that needs improvement with Gran Turismo. They are definitely doing better than ever. Pardon me, speaking to complimenting the series, fair play to Polyphony. We've got in GT7, I would argue, by far, if you think about it, the best experience for car modification in the all-round sense in any Gran Turismo game. Because think about it, you've got hundreds of motor swaps, hundreds of visual modifications, the most in-depth livery editor, and all of these things in one game, in one platform. We've had certain ideas from that in other games before. GT Sport, for example, had the livery editor but didn't have the motor swaps, didn't have as many visuals. Congrats on channel. That's fine. I tell you what, buddy, Firefox, your English is better than my Italian. So, again, grazie. Oh yeah, I need to watch the fuel as well, because I've got 2 left. What was I saying? I can't remember now. Oh well. I'll probably finish most of the thought anyway. It really doesn't take much for me to forget my train of thought. I'm not diagnosed with ADD or ADHD or anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised. But then again, that also wouldn't make sense if I had that, because on the one hand, my brain is all over the place, and I can jump around topics like crazy and forget what I was saying literally 3 seconds ago, like a goldfish. Or I can sit there and do a 24-hour race in one go. And those two things don't tend to go hand in hand. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying about the modifications. Why aren't all the rally engines used in engine swaps? Yeah, a lot of them aren't. I do feel like one of the critiques that I have, I was actually saying this on Discord for the channel, funnily enough, not too long ago today. The one thing I don't like about the motor swaps is that it feels like a lot of them are reused to a bit of an excessive degree, and not so much that they're even reused, because you could use the same argument for Forza, because if you're looking, for example, Horizon 5, most of the cars that have motor swaps have at least some variation of the same options. So for example, they've got like a Mercedes C63 V8 swap, they've got a rally engine swap, they've got a bike engine swap, a Ford F350 or F250 Platinum diesel engine swap, a Toyota Celica VVTi swap. You know, it's a lot of the same thing, the notorious Lambo V12 swap. But the thing is, because you've got that variety, whereas in Gran Turismo you've got like, okay, here's your K24 engine swap and that's your only option for that particular car, it makes it feel more repetitive and more samey, especially when it's literally that same K24 engine over and over again, or that same Chiron engine, or that same BRZ LS7 engine, blah 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 blah. Yeah, exactly. Like, just in the Honda community alone, obviously they can't only pander to that, but if you just want to go down the Honda route, there are so many obvious Honda engines, even to a non-super fan of Honda like myself. Oh dear, I went a little bit too far then, so I'm going to have to lean out my fuel a little bit. I forgot to pit. Oh well. Even as a non-Honda super fan, you know, even I know that you're going to want more than just a K24, you know? Yeah, thanks, Mikey. But yeah, I mean, like for me, for example, some of the swaps I want, because I'm not even opposed to crazy swaps. I love crazy swaps. So for me, for example, if I'm going to pay 10 million for an engine, I would much rather have, yeah, box. I would much rather have a 10 million credit Formula 1 engine. Like, imagine if instead of the McLaren F1 motor, it was literally the V10, or what was it, do we have a V12? I think it's a V12, I can't remember now. But the V10 motor swap from the Formula car into the same Lexus, for example. Make that 10 mil. I don't think players would really be surprised by that. It's a Formula engine, of course. Or in my case, the engine swap I want, probably the most in the game, and I feel like I'm the only person who wants this. I want the Peugeot 908 engine. It's the craziest diesel engine in the game. It's one of the only diesel engines in the game. It's a 5.5 litre twin-turbo V12 diesel that you can build to ridiculous horsepower, ridiculous torque. The 908 is already kind of in a class of its own, if you think about it, really. It doesn't even have the R10 to go up against. And imagine putting that in like a Unimog. Just have a monster V12 diesel engine in an Unimog. Or make like your own interpretation of an Audi Q7 V12 TDI by putting it into, I don't know, a Ford Raptor or something. Just something like that where it's a bit different, you know, or even an R18 engine. It's something that's different. Give me a diesel, even give me some electric motor swaps. You can do that occasionally in Forza, but unfortunately even in Forza you can't put electric motor swaps into normal cars. You can only swap between electric to more powerful electric. I'd like, thanks for reminding me, I would like, for example, to have be able to convert a car to electric, be able to convert a car to diesel, be able to put something, you know, be able to do the curse stuff that people do in real life, like drop an LS engine into a Tesla, you know, like people actually have in real life, make it like a drag Tesla. Why not? Why can't you do that? They're already using this clearly highly flexible physics and tuning engine, whatever they would refer to that as, so there should be no reason why you can't kind of flip that on its head. Because if you think about it, all you'd really be doing, and I'm sure I'm oversimplifying this, but all you'd fundamentally be doing, at least on the surface, is reskinning a Tesla and its physics over like a LS swapped fill in the blank, like a Mustang or something else, so it would have roughly the same fuel economy, and you'd basically just be using a different looking version of a otherwise normal car that now just looks like a Tesla, kind of like Road Trip Adventure. Why not? You know, it would make a Tesla more useful for the most part. Why not put like a, I don't even know, why not put like a crazy V12 or something into a Vision GT car? They're already concept cars, so why can't you go even crazier with them? You know, yeah, exactly, full drivetrain, just go for it. That's literally what people have done in real life. Why not? Because many of them are already cursed anyway. Somebody said just now that the LFA is cursed. Some of them are cursed in concept, some of them are more cursed in execution in terms of how the cars actually feel to drive once the engine's been put in there. But some of them are great. I mean, one of my favourites was my favourite for a reason, and that is actually, crazily enough, a childhood reason. Literally goes back to like 2007 or something when I started playing Forza Motorsport 2, which was my first time playing the game. And I remember you could do motor swaps in the game, and I was convinced I was going to jump into that game, I was going to get a Clio V6, and I was going to drop a Porsche Carrera GT V10 into it and make a Clio F1. Now, of course, you couldn't do that, and to this day you still can't in Forza. But to come around so many years later, and in Gran Turismo of all places, which I never thought would have motor swaps, not legitimate ones anyway, aside from like the mods that people used to do, the hybrid builds, and be able to actually finally put an Espas F1 engine, so even more authentic to what I was going for, into, unfortunately not the Clio, but into the Megane Trophy, which you could argue is even more fitting. That's just awesome, you know, that's the kind of creativity I like to see with the motor swaps. So for me, I will, especially as I've gotten older, and I will definitely say my real life driving, my real world cars and the car shows and the meets and the people I hang with outside of gaming have actually been far more formative to my thoughts in games than gaming itself has been, which is crazy. And for those of you who are younger, I'm actually really looking forward for you to experience this, because you can't yet see just how much your real life driving is going to affect how you feel about games. It will change the kinds of cars that you love in games. It will change what you enjoy and what you miss and what you maybe don't like as much about games, more than you can imagine, because you haven't experienced it yet. And it's so cool to experience the difference. It makes you, in my case, for example, I favour now, because don't get me wrong, I used to do what everyone does, all petrol heads do, you know, I'd want my next car to be more powerful, faster, and for a while I did that. And then GT500 into the A70. I mean, I could see them doing that. I'm not sure, have they done the GT500 Super engine as an option yet? I want to say they have, but I also, actually, I'm not sure. They've done the 2JZ, obviously, and we've done the SC430 more than a few times. That's another one of those really overused engines. It's, you know, what is it, 3UZ or whatever it is. So yeah, it's iconic for sure, but even then, give me like a 1UZ, like a Lexus LS400 motor swap. Obviously, you'd probably have to have the car in the game as well, but even then, put something that's like street-level legend. But yeah, that kind of creativity, that kind of enjoyment of driving, speaking to this point, it actually gave me an idea for another brief video, which I was thinking of doing. I might still do this coming up on the channel. And it's actually revisiting an idea which I've had before about an open world Gran Turismo, a free roaming kind of Horizon style Gran Turismo. And why, the more I think about it, but for different reasons than what I've thought about before, I actually think we do need an open world Gran Turismo. And I think maybe he already knows this, maybe it's already being worked on, you know, I don't know anything about the inside story of Polyphony or Kaz. I actually think Kaz needs an open world Gran Turismo game more than he might realise, unless he already thinks that. And I'm not going to get into why, because I'll do that in its own video, but yeah, because what can we Huracan in the Countach? What can we can do something in the Countach, can't we, at the moment? What is it? I can't remember what motor you can put in that one. What was it? Was it a Ventador? I can't remember what engine you can put in the Countach, but it's something, wasn't it? It's like 900 horsepower tune, or something like that. I can't remember what it was now. But yeah, more interesting motor swaps. I mean, I basically want to do the stuff that I can't afford to do in real life. So, for example, so it is the V12, yeah. For example, there are so many motor swaps I've thought about doing to my cars. Because at the moment their engines are working fine, but they're perfect cars for it. They're old 60s American cars with big engine bays, a nice adapter plate, slam it onto the old 3-speed or even change out the gearbox as well. You've got minimal electricals to worry about. They're perfect for motor swaps. Some of them obviously are crazier than others, but most of the swaps that I would want to do tend to be really complex from an engineering standpoint, or they require quite a lot of cost for stuff like standalone ECUs and wiring and dealing with fitting the engine into the engine bay, for example. So some of the ideas I've had, for example, similar to what you could do in Gran Turismo, I've thought about putting a Mercedes S-Class V12, like an S600 engine, into my Huss instead of the Pontiac V8. Because why not have a Mercedes V12 Huss? Obviously the drawback being loads of electricals, standalone ECU, wiring loom, you know, just all of these excessive problems. The engine wouldn't want to work with a 3-speed gearbox. It would have the risk of stalling potentially with the different ratios and just not linking up to an old school mechanical gearbox, blah blah blah, properly. Whereas in a game, I don't need to worry about that. And we can't pretend like Forza or Polyphony are even, you know, they don't care if the engines don't fit. I mean, look at how many engines are in this game that would never fit in the car. I'm trying to think of some of the prime ones now, but I know there's at least a couple of cars in the game that have Chiron swaps that there is not a chance in hell a Chiron which would fit in that car. Even something like a Lexus RCF or I'm pretty sure a C6 Corvette, I don't think you would fit, not with all of the required ancillaries, a Chiron engine under a Corvette bonnet. Maybe you could, but I highly doubt it, because I tell you what, my Lincoln is a big car, and you cannot fit even a straight 6 Cummins engine, a diesel, into that Lincoln without chopping into the dash, and I know because a guy's done that. And it's just the simple case of a V8 having 2 banks of 4 versus a Cummins as a straight 6, so it's 2 pistons longer, so you just can't fit it in there. So I find it very hard to believe that something like a Lexus can fit a Chiron engine under the bonnet. And if you're going to go to that level of crazy, I still don't understand why they haven't gone full hog and just gone for something like a Red Bull engine swap into a Formula car, or a Tomahawk engine swap into like a Chiron. Because how awesome would that be? Just go full ridiculous. Give it a point level that's too high to be useful for anything, so it's not like it's going to be OP. It's just purely for fun. Imagine how much fun that would be. A 2,500 horsepower Chiron. Or even drop it in a Viper. That would be appropriate. 2,500 horsepower Viper. I mean, there are literally Vipers on the road that have more power than that already. Like drag spec Vipers. So it's not like it's that unrealistic. And there are electric cars that are running that kind of horsepower or not far off it. So it's feasible. if they added something like a Lotus Evija to the game, which I would personally love to see. That's 2,000 horsepower right there. Imagine what kind of motor swaps you could get out of that. Drop that into a Tesla. It'd still be useless for anything other than like a 3-lap race, but still. So, let's have a quick stock check. We've got under 2.5 hours remaining, so we are well over halfway, which is nice. We have 16 laps left of fuel. We are well ahead of the next car, nothing to worry about there, no surprise either. Lap times as I go off the track are, pretty good. About average, what I'd expect. Certainly when I'm talking and not really paying attention. My brain's on autopilot, so about 2-minute 2, 2-minute 3 laps, that's fine. Especially when the race is based on time rather than laps. And I'm going to check the weather in a second. Not that I really need to. Previous comment. Yeah, I can't see what you're saying there, mate. I'm going to assume, and I'm probably wrong, but I'm going to guess that you were saying something about the comment being lagging behind or something maybe. If so, then that's nothing new for the streams. I don't know why they do that. Every so often the stream comments lag, and then they tend to all just come through all at once. I don't know why. And then sometimes it will just reload a ton of them. Or you might have said something completely different. Unfortunately, I haven't even been able to do the weekly Power Pack challenges for this week because obviously I haven't been able to log into the game, or I thought I couldn't log into the game because I thought, stupidly, I guess, again, I'd never done it so I didn't know, I thought the way this worked was as soon as I logged into GT7, it immediately said continue race and you didn't have an option of anything else. I didn't realise that it actually just puts you into the home menu and then you can apparently do, it looks like anything else. Maybe you can't enter another race, but it looked that way. I actually had to go back into the Power Pack, click specifically on this race, and then it gave me the option of continuing or restarting, which that was way more room for movement than I thought I had, which is nice. It shows it is not just an exploit, it's an integrated part of, they wanted us to do this, in other words, which is nice. But yeah, otherwise I would have logged in and done that, but had I known. And as much as I love endurance racing, it will be nice to finally have this all completely done and out of the way. Because again, although I like endurance, Suzuka, as much as I like the track, it's not the kind of place where I want to spend 6 hours, really. That being said, I do hope, as we were talking about last time, I do sincerely hope that we get more races for the Power Pack, especially for people who haven't bought it yet, because if you think about it, from that perspective, that gives them even better value. Technically it gives us the same value, but it makes the bang for your buck even more obvious when, if somebody downloads it now, they get in immediate access to their own cars and weekly challenges. That's all great. And then imagine if you've got even more endurance races to do. Technically it means it's, funnily enough, it's the opposite actually of what I just said. It kind of makes it harder for newer players because now they've got even more races to do and mop up all of those additional stars if they do add more. Whereas for us, if you've got, for example, after this race the full 1,000 stars and then they add more, then that won't take me as long to get them all. So yeah, maybe not. Maybe it's the opposite of what I said actually. Beep beep traffic. No thoughts, head empty. Completely oblivious to the flags. Co-op mode. What, like for the Power Pack? To get friends to like help you out with it? It would especially be fun. I think we talked about this before in a previous stream. I think it was an endurance stream. But it would be particularly enjoyable if you could do co-ops for the endurance races. especially for something like the 24-hour. Do like 4-hour or 8-hour stints each. That would be a lot of fun. It would break up the monotony, and because every single time I've done one of them so far, especially the longer ones, but in particular the 24s, there's definitely there's a spot in there which drags, where the race really, really drags. I'm trying to remember now when it was. I think in Le Mans, I seem to recall that final, I want to say like the final 8 hours, the last third, really dragged. Especially after like hour 19, I think it was, it really, really dragged. And unfortunately, that's the one where you can't even see that, because I didn't realise about YouTube's processing problems, so the last, 6 hours of the race aren't even saved, which is a massive shame. And then with the Nurb, I think the part in the Nürburgring, it dragged at the end, for sure. And howdy Jazz. And happy Friday to you too. Hopefully this Friday's stream lasts better than last Friday. I seem to recall that the Nürburgring kind of dragged on the nighttime section, because nighttime just seemed to last so long. Which is funny, because I was looking forward to nighttime, and then it just kind of felt like it was never ending. Like it didn't match the clock, almost. But yeah, I mean, they all drag. Funnily enough, the only one which didn't drag, and this really is ironic, maybe it's a case of expectations, was Spa. Spa flew by. It felt like it was 4 hours instead of 8, in a good way. Because 4 hours doesn't sound like it's a great time, but it felt like half the time. There was constant chat, unbroken stream, which is so weird because, again, I know this is sacrilegious to say, but I'm not a massive fan of Spa. I think it's fine, but it's certainly not one of my favourite circuits. I don't give it the reverence that many people do. And the idea of doing 8 hours of that track certainly didn't appeal to me. But I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. The race went well, I enjoyed it, and yeah, it was all good. Excuse me. The Aston's great, but it's great in a very dated way. I was talking about this in part 1. That's the whole reason why I wanted to use this car. Because as it looks like with yourself. And just on a side point, speaking of rain, I don't think it rained at all in the 8 hours as well. But yeah, on the point of the Aston, I wanted to use it because people tend to forget about it, and also because I just love this era. Early 2000s GT1 is just, to me, some of the coolest cars. The Aston, Celine, Maserati MC12, just kind of the end of the badass era of racing, where you could have giant engines and relatively minimal aero by today's standards, and it was almost all like road-going GT cars, like a DB9 in this case, or a supercar like a Celine S7 or a Maserati, just battling it out around the track. It was so cool. Some of the coolest liveries as well. And yeah, it's a lot more convenient when the car is quicker, that's for sure. But to be fair, that's more down to what I've done to the car rather than the speed. Because with nearly 800 horsepower, it'd be difficult for it not to be quicker. But yeah, I like picking cars that are a bit different. And anyone who watched the Power Pack and the endurance races knows that anyway. Like for the Nürburgring, I picked technically the easiest chili option, but I picked it because it was the Ferrari. And the Ferrari was newer and more interesting. I personally am not a fan ever of the Audi R8 race cars. I'm sure it has its fans, but I just don't like them. I find them really boring to drive, slightly unusual handling. Just don't like them. And I tell you what, credit to Gran Turismo, I guess, because of all the cars I've reviewed in real life as well, that was one of the ones I didn't like. Did not like the Audi R8 V10. I didn't like its handling at all. It felt very floaty and imprecise, which is ironic given that people have said that they love the handling on the Audi R8, but I really didn't. So I guess the game gets that across, even though it's a racing version, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I was between this and the McLaren. I was considering doing the short-tail McLaren F1 GTR, but I'm more a fan of this car, and I'm glad I picked it, certainly now in the race. And to be honest, even if the other cars were closer, and if they were faster, and if I could turn up the chili challenge, I think I'd still want it. Fuel seems good, tyre wear's good, performance is good. The R8 needs more power. Interesting. I don't even use it enough to know that, to be honest. And obviously the other option for the Nurb was the AMG, which I'm also not really a fan of, funnily enough, in real life or in the game. I find the AMG GT platform to be stunningly underwhelming, given the cars that came before it. It's a perfectly fine Mercedes super sports car if it hadn't have followed up two of the most badass Mercedes models of all time, the SLS and the SLR, which in my opinion are just way cooler cars than the AMG GT platform, even including stuff like the Black Edition, which I've never liked. And yeah, I would agree that the AMG is OP. It does have kind of a similar handling profile to a Viper. It is very Viper-esque. I don't know, out of the two I would choose the Viper, but yeah, I don't know, I just don't really get on with the Merc. I find it a bit heavy handling and kind of dull to drive. I find it a bit boring. I prefer the handling signature of something like this, the Aston, because the Aston, it's front engine, but it doesn't feel like your typical front engine. It almost feels more like what I'd expect from a Maserati, like an extreme example of a front mid-engine, where the engine's like way back in the dash. And I think the Mercedes might be similar to that, so it's weird how there is a difference there. But, yeah. But generally speaking, funnily enough, and again this is sacrilege from a petrol head, but in real life and in games, this has been a consistent through line for me, I don't really like mid-engine cars. Which I know is, like I said, a horrific thing to say for a petrol head, and don't get me wrong, there are plenty of mid-engine cars which I love. One of my favourite cars ever is the Zonda. Another one of my favourites is the MC12. So, you know, I love mid-engines. Love the Celine S7, blah, blah, blah. But stuff like the NSX, not a huge fan of the handling. Stuff like the Audi R8, not a huge fan. I don't really like most of the mid-engine Lambos. I find them a bit squirrely. And it's regardless of rear-wheel drive, regardless of all-wheel drive, they just kind of have that through line. The only mid-engine cars that I do tend to like tend to be either ones which more than make up for it by just being undeniably exquisite, like a Zonda, or I like the ones that don't really feel mid-engine. So, like a Bugatti, for example, wherein, to me, a Bugatti doesn't really feel like the engine's anywhere. It feels almost like it's everywhere, because it's such a heavy car, and it has such a nice split of really heavy four-wheel drive, well, I guess all-wheel drive, that it doesn't feel like a mid, rear, or front engine car. It just feels heavy, period, almost like an electric car. And in real life, it's been the same. So Audi R8, didn't like it. Ferrari F355, I wouldn't say I didn't like it, but I was definitely underwhelmed. So mid-engine cars just, for whatever reason, don't do it for me. I much prefer front engine, front mid even, because it's more predictable. I like the shape more on a lot of them, and this Aston definitely ties into that. I think part of the reason why I like the Aston as well might be because, further to that point, I've always been kind of a GT car kind of guy. I do like a nice long-distance 2+2 kind of supercar. Again, that's why I love the SLR McLaren. It's got that kind of long-distance supercar vibe to it. Yeah, there's just something about a car with like a super long bonnet. Again, I love Panos, so it checks out. That sort of Batmobile approach, or a Gillette Vertigo. I like it. Porsche doesn't like the M3. Oh, I didn't notice your other comment. I noticed you said something about the M3. Were you saying that the M3 was super OP or something? But yeah, I mean, it's funny that I like driving Porsches as much as I do, because everything about my driving style would indicate I'd hate a car with the engine in the back, but I love 911s. They're really good, super OP. And I guess it's because Porsche's just been doing it for so long that they've managed to make a car which almost has that Bugatti factor, wherein if you drive a 911 in real life, I actually would not say it feels like a rear-engine car anymore. I'm sure that the older ones did, but the oldest one I've driven was a 993, which I wouldn't really call an old 911. You'd have to get back to like the 930 era, like the old DuckTales, to really feel that probably. But on the newer stuff, yeah, to me, and the newer you get, the more you feel it, because there's more electronic stuff helping you. But it doesn't feel like the engine's in the back anymore. It feels like it's nowhere and everywhere all at once. Like it's just, the whole car is one breathing machine. Which, yeah, I guess I should be on the marketing team for Porsche, but... nice. And yeah, the Nordschleifer stream was a while ago now, so yeah, nice to finally be back and finish it off. I'm definitely a procrastinator when it comes to finishing off this Suzuka race. And then just my luck that when I tried to finish it off last week, the stream crashed. But hey, we're back to it, and hopefully it doesn't happen this time. We'll see. But yeah, it was fun with the Spa, the Le Mans, and the NURB. We had a nice flow of people in and out, and more so in the 24-hour. You see so many different time zones of people coming in and out throughout the day, which is very cool. But yeah, I will be grateful and glad to have this one done, which is also why I started it a little bit earlier. I was thinking of starting at 6 PM UK time, but I started at 5, because hey, why not? I'll get it finished near enough 8 o'clock as it stands, because yeah, what is it now? It is 10 to 6, pardon me, 10 to 6, 10 to 7, right? Yeah, so about 8 o'clock. What do I think they'll do it? What do I think they'll do to it even? Funnily enough, we were talking about that just now. I actually have kind of two answers. One ties into what you just said. With the weekly challenges, I think they may well change the format of that in future. I think they might be kind of giving us a bit of an easy ride for now, like, oh, just do any 3 races, just have fun. I think they might, once they recognise videos such as mine, and doubtless other people have already been doing it, where you can just game the system, just do Daytona 3 times and job done. I don't get the impression that Polyphony really like people cheesing it like that. They prefer people to spend more time, which I don't really like that. You know, if people find an exploit, let them use it if it isn't hurting anyone, but whatever, that's by the by. So I could see them going more specific, you know, like do this specific race, that specific race, and this specific race for the weekly challenge. Aside from that, we were talking earlier on about the potential of the Mad in More events. I actually really hope that they do. In real life, Porsches are money sink dealerships, so the base. Do you mean money? I'm assuming from what you're saying at the end, because obviously they allocate a car. Oh, interesting. To be fair, as much as I would dislike that, it wouldn't surprise me, because one of the things, because I work with dealers in real life, and one of the things that you learn about dealerships, especially franchise dealerships, more than just, you know, used car dealerships, is that they're a law to themselves. They do answer to the manufacturer, kind of, but the manufacturer, from my experience, seems pretty hands-off when it comes to individual dealerships. So you'll even have 2 different dealerships. One will have a fantastic reputation, the other will be awful, even though they're supposed to be running by pretty much the same playbook. So when it comes to Porsche, I could see that being more of a dealer problem than a Porsche problem. It could be Porsche that's mandating that, but I would hope not. Because there's a difference to me between that and a company like Bristol, for example, when they wouldn't sell a car to James May because they didn't like Jeremy Clarkson. I just find that kind of funny, you know. And Bristol went out of business, so, you know, the laughs on Jeremy and James. But I don't really have any issue with that, wherein I should have an issue with that, but I just find that funny, because they're such a bespoke, exclusive brand that it's kind of like, okay, that's just funny. Because if James May really wanted one, he could just get somebody else to buy it and buy it off of them. So that's not really the point. But with someone like Porsche, yeah, I hope not. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. That being said, I'm very glad to see the strengths that Porsche has come to in the past 30 years in particular. In fact, no, more so the past 26 years, I guess, or you could say more like 23, maybe. Oh yeah, Ferrari are absolute scum, as far as I'm concerned. And I will say that as a car reviewer in real life, I will say, Ferrari, you're scum. And I don't care if you ever watch this, because you already wouldn't let me review a car. Ferrari hate people reviewing their cars. It's a wonder anyone gets access to it. Used Ferrari dealers don't let people drive their cars either. So the only chance you've got is to either drive a Ferrari that somebody just privately owns, or to find a dealer who doesn't care. You know, like somebody who doesn't just sell Ferraris, they sell whatever and lets you drive it. Which I hate to say, because my dream car is literally a Ferrari, the FF. So I don't like to say that, but I just don't like their business practice. Still haven't seen a Porsche. Yeah, I think we desperately need more front-engine Porsche representation. And although many players probably wouldn't care, I think a Cayenne would be a really good choice. A Cayenne Turbo S, for example, would finally be a really good rival to a Urus. Yeah, exactly. And as I've heard it, I believe, on the point of Ferrari sucking, I believe they also try to repossess your car if you modify it or paint it or wrap it or whatever in some way that they don't like. Which makes me really curious how brands like Liberty Walk can get away with that, or how their customers can get away with it. Because I tell you what, I almost owned a Ferrari in the past, believe it or not. And it was a Ferrari that I actually do like, which most people don't. It's called the 400i. And it's this super boxy 2+2, funnily enough, front engine Ferrari. And it was being sold pretty cheap because it wasn't ratty, but it wasn't like Ferrari quality. It was a bit torn up. The interior was a bit ripped and blah blah blah. He was trying to sell it, I think, for 25 grand. And at the time, I had the Lincoln Premier, and there was a Lincoln Premier like mine selling in, I think it was Denmark or something, for 80,000 euros. And meanwhile, mine was 16,000. So dealers obviously didn't know that. So I was trying to blag it using that other car that was for sale to kind of bump mine up. Not to that degree, I didn't go stupid with it, but I was trying to, see if this guy wanted to swap basically my Lincoln Premier for this Ferrari 400i, and he didn't go for it in the end. He was tempted, but he said the Lincoln wouldn't fit in his location. But like for me, for example, you already know, knowing me, that Ferrari ain't staying standard. The first thing I'm doing to that thing is straight piping it. I don't care about Ferrari. And then if Ferrari comes along and tries to repossess my car, especially if it were a classic, I don't know if they do it with classics or not, jog on, mate. Because if you want to repossess my car, you're going to have to find it first. You are not having my car, especially not if I didn't buy it directly from Ferrari. And people always used to say to me with Rolls-Royce, because they're also notorious, or they used to be notorious. Now Rolls-Royce is kind of just another brand, but GT8 by the end of this year. I wouldn't expect that, mate. I honestly don't think GT8 is honestly anytime soon. Anytime soon. The release of the power pack, the updates to the power pack, Kaz saying he wants to update my first Gran Turismo, all of this stuff added together, I just don't think GT8 is going to be this year. I would say maybe end of next year at best, and even then I'd say that is highly optimistic. But yeah, I actually think that there is more of a likelihood of some other kind of game coming from Polyphony before a GT8 happens. Something perhaps more like a GT Sport 2, as much as I would personally dislike that, or even, again, it's not going to happen because Kaz has said, but like a Taurus Trophy 2, or even something like an open world Gran Turismo World, as I've called it before. I could see that happening before a GT8, but we'll have to see. But yeah, Rolls-Royce back in the day used to be notorious. John Dodd, he built the Beast, that 27-litre V12 Merlin engine Rolls-Royce. They forced him to take the grille off the front. In my case, I built the custom Rolls-Royce. I dropped the Rolls-Royce on top of a Mitsubishi diesel pickup truck, and Rolls-Royce never contacted me once. Now, granted, I was only driving the car for a few months before I moved it on, and it took 11 months to build, and it's not like it was a viral vehicle by any means, so they probably didn't even see it. But my argument on that, because I got asked by quite a few people, what does Rolls-Royce think of this, or does Rolls-Royce want to take the car off you, or whatever, because back in the day, Rolls-Royce used to actually pay people to have the car back, to avoid the modifications that people had done to it, to avoid it being seen. A mate was telling me recently he had a friend who turned a Rolls-Royce hearse into an ice cream van, and Rolls-Royce bought the ice cream van off of him again because they didn't want it being used. A Ford Zephyr with a chrome nose, do you mean? Is that what you mean by a Rolls-Royce? Yeah, pretty much. I had a 1973 Shadow 1. So yeah, basically a Ford Zephyr with a chrome nose. May as well have been an Austin Princess with a chrome nose, to be honest. But yeah, Rolls-Royce never once contacted me, never have to this day. And the crucial thing is, I don't think they ever will. Because Rolls-Royce of 1973 is not Rolls-Royce of now. Rolls-Royce now is BMW. And I don't think they care. I don't think BMW cares at all about what somebody does to an old Rolls-Royce anymore. Whereas Ferrari, still being the same brand, they probably would care. If I bought like an old Ferrari Dino and put it on a, I don't know, Tesla Roadster chassis or something, they'd probably care. But at the end of the day, it's my car, so I don't even know how they can get around that. And yeah, Rolls-Royce is still around. Funnily enough, I'm actually on a rare car spotting page, and somebody recently spotted a Rolls-Royce boat tail on the road, which in my opinion is probably one of the ugliest cars made in the past 30 years. And they've only made 3, and they cost $28 million each. And I noticed in this picture that somebody had taken of this Rolls-Royce on the motorway, you could see the exhaust hanging off underneath. And it's a brand new car. And when I say hanging off, obviously it wasn't hanging off, but you could literally see the pipe at the back underneath hanging down by design underneath the car, as if it was like a Ford Fiesta or something. I'm like, what in the hell is going on with Rolls-Royce? And it's funny because Rolls-Royce really used to mean something. And I've said to people before, there's no better way of destroying the imagery of Rolls-Royce than by working on them. It's the best way to destroy any kind of respect you have for that brand, because boy are they garbage underneath. They are garbage vehicles. And for the amount of jokes that Brits make about American cars, I tell you what, I've had more American cars than a Rolls, and my American cars have been more reliable, they're better on fuel, and they're more spacious and more comfortable than the Rolls. Now, after finishing my work with the Rolls, it was great. And the reason why it was great is because it was a 2.5-litre diesel Mitsubishi that did 30 to the gallon, had all-wheel drive, 5-speed Mitsubishi automatic instead of a 3-speed GM gearbox. No offence to GM, but it's not exactly what you'd expect in a Rolls-Royce. Here's the irony. The Rolls-Royce had the exact same 3-speed gearbox that my hearse has. The 67 Pontiac has the same 3-speed gearbox as a Rolls-Royce. Except in the Pontiac it makes sense. But, yeah. On the point of Assetto Corsa, I will say, to be honest, absolutely no interest at all, because I don't play Assetto Corsa at all. I tried playing the first one once, I did a review, it was the worst received review I have ever done, so much so that I kind of pussied out and turned off the comments, which I regret doing. There's no point in turning them off. In fact, I might even turn them back on again. But, yeah, I just hated it. I hated the game. It was so obviously geared only towards wheels, and obviously coming from my angle of not using wheels, I just didn't enjoy it. Whereas with Project Cars, especially if you apply the right settings, you can have plenty of fun on Project Cars 1, 2 and 3, obviously 3, but even 1 and 2, on a controller. And I like that, because even though Project Cars is no Gran Turismo or Forza in terms of accessibility, it's definitely more accessible than AC. I don't know about the newer ones, but I don't know. AC just... it lost my interest really quick, and it's never really done anything to get it back. Each subsequent thing I've seen from AC just looks like really Blancpain kind of stuff, GT3 cars, which doesn't interest me much. Never seen with TVR. Are they as crazy? Yes and no. TVRs, I almost feel like TVRs aren't as crazy now as we used to think of them as being. Do I like Alfa Romeos? I'll return to the TVR thing. I like some Alfa Romeos. And I guess I should say yes, because of all the Beards and Cars reviews, the single best handling car I've ever driven, my favourite handling car I've ever driven, was an Alfa Romeo, the Giulia Quadrifoglio. Just perfection, absolute perfection on handling. It felt like driving, it felt like a combination of a Maserati Quattroporte, which is my second favourite handling car ever, but smaller, lighter, more compact. And if you combine that with the kind of handling of like a touring car, like a road-going DTM car, just perfection, perfect handling. And it makes sense why it would feel like a Quattroporte, because if you look at the shape, it's also a 4-door wedge, so they're very similar. And on the point, going back to TVRs, I think TVR were crazier than their time, but they're not necessarily quite as crazy now, if that makes sense, because cars have gotten so much faster now, and so much more leery. You know, you can literally go out and buy a family electric car now that will outrun a TVR. I'm not sure about the connection between Alfa Romeo and Ferrari anymore. They used to own them, I believe, and I know Enzo Ferrari himself got started as an Alfa Romeo driver, but I don't think they're connected anymore, because I think Alfa Romeo is part of the Fiat Chrysler group, I want to say. Maybe not anymore. And I don't know if Ferrari is. Maybe they are. I think they might be more tangential now. And obviously Maserati's broken away. They don't use Ferrari engines anymore. And that's going really well for them. Now Maserati, speaking of which, is talking about joining forces with Chinese brands for production. They're determined to destroy my favourite company. They really are. Maserati. I spoke to Ferrari earlier on. You're not going to be watching this, but Maserati, if somebody at Maserati is watching this, I feel the exact opposite to Ferrari. Employ me. I will work for zero salary. You can just pay me in a percentage of sales, which means I guarantee the success because I need to be paid. If you put me in a design position in Maserati when it comes to designing the platforms and how the cars should be, what they should represent, etc., I don't even know what that job position would be, I will turn the company around because I know what Maserati needs to be, I know what it should be, and I know how to make them succeed. They had some good ideas, they were on the right path. Making a 4x4 was actually a good idea. It's what saved Porsche. But since then, you've made some really bad choices. And one of the problems was you put a diesel engine into a Quattroporte. I know people defend it, but I'm sorry. A Quattroporte should never have a diesel engine. I've got no issue with there being a diesel 4x4. I've got no issue with a Ghibli having a diesel, but a Quattroporte should not have a diesel. You demarked the car. You made it just another BMW rival. The Quattroporte has never been a 5 Series rival. It's not a Jag rival. It's a 4-door Ferrari, and that's what it should remain. By making it a diesel, you've undervalued it. That's like buying a Rolls-Royce Phantom with a Renault Alpine V6 engine. There is no market for it. It should not exist. Those kind of decisions shouldn't have been made, and I believe I could help the company. They're not watching this, so who really cares? But there's my 2 cents. What were we talking about before that? I can't. Something about Alfa Romeo. But yeah, actually, as crazy as it is, I've only driven that one Alfa Romeo. I've only driven the Giulia. So, hell of a thing. Talk about a debut. I drove it, and best handling car I've ever driven. So it bodes well for other ones. A mate of mine used to have a Brera. He loved it. He said it was very thirsty on fuel, though. I think he had the 3.2, I think, the V6, like we used to have in Gran Turismo. Which Alfa... I mean, I love the 8C. I love the 8C. It's a gorgeous looking car. I hear it's awful to drive. I need to remember to pit in as well. But yeah, I hear that the 8C is really, really stiff on the suspension, because obviously it's basically a Maserati Gran Turismo underneath. But yeah, I hear it's really, really rough on the suspension, on the ride quality, but who really cares? It's an art piece that you can drive. That's the point of the car. And I tell you what, uncomfortable or not, if you compare the used values of a Maserati Gran Turismo to the used values of an Alfa Romeo 8C, there's just a little bit of a difference. You can buy a Gran Turismo for, at least here in the UK, 13, 15 grand. You can buy an Alfa Romeo 8C for 300. Just a bit of a difference. And the funny thing about the 4C, I feel like I'm going to get a bit of hate from this. I don't like them. I've never liked the Alfa Romeo 4C. It feels to me like it's a bit of a mismatched car. Like it looks like it should be a nice little Lotus rival, but it also feels like it's a bit too expensive for that. I guess it's a bit more of an Alpine rival rather than a Lotus rival or a Porsche Cayenne kind of thing. But then also part of me thinks it looks too small to be a Cayenne rival. It looks a bit too dumpy. So I don't know. Yeah, the 4C just doesn't quite do it for me. The 8C definitely does. I really would love it if Alfa Romeo made a 12C, a supercar, like a proper V12 supercar. And, I mean, think about it, share it with a Ferrari platform. I guess not anymore, now that Ferrari just loves electric cars and V6s, apparently. But, yeah, back when Ferrari had some cool V12s, that would have been awesome. And, yeah, I mean, you've just kind of raised another problem for the Alfa Romeo, though. When the new MR2 comes out, I mean, who needs an MR2 now? Or who needs a 4C now? Now you've got the Toyota reliability, and it'll definitely be quicker around a track because it's a Toyota. But, yeah. I guess it won't really overlap in terms of who would buy one, but yeah. And maybe it was smart for Toyota to wait a little bit more. I don't know, because is the Alfa Romeo 4C still in production? I don't think it is. All I want is the Beamer. Yes, agreed. The Ferrari, yeah. I really do want the 599 back. That's also one of the vehicles which I want the most from the data mining list. So at least we do know it's supposed to arrive. Pardon me. And it's funny with the 599, I never had any interest in it And then it just kind of really grew on me quick over time. And yeah, Celica and the MR2, which I think we talked about that actually in the first part of the stream before it crashed last week. That to me, the Supra almost feels more like what I would want from a Celica, just with all-wheel drive instead. And then I wish the Supra had been higher up, more like a GTR level kind of thing. But that's all by the by. And what do I know? Toyota's a multi-billion dollar company, so they clearly know what they're doing. Which is why you should be listening, Maserati, because you ain't a multi-billion dollar company. But yeah, the MR2 should be fun. But what I was saying is, I think maybe it was a good choice to wait to do an MR2, because now that the 4C isn't really a thing anymore, and now that I believe is an Alpine stopping production as well on the A110, I think the MR2 will kind of have the market a little bit to itself, and I think that's a really good choice. And I think it's going to be a really good choice for the same reason why the Toyota 86 was a really good choice. Because if you're not going to buy a Toyota 86, what are you going to get instead? It doesn't really have many natural rivals. You could say a used Porsche Boxster. That seems a bit of a risk. Or you could say, what, Mazda MX-5? I don't feel like there's really much crossover there because it's a pretty different kind of car. It's not as powerful. You don't have 4 seats. It's not quite as practical. It's more of a lightweight kind of fun approach, whereas the 86, you could kind of use it a bit more every day. I think Toyota's made some really smart moves, not only bringing back performance cars, but also when they choose to bring them back. And somebody noticed recently, and this could be interesting to see, I suspect that this is going to be just a test mule for the MR2, but somebody spotted that there was a GR Yaris being tested with what looks to be a mid-engine layout and a roof scoop. And they were saying like, oh, it could be the return of the mythical Toyota 222D, that stillborn MR2 Group B rally car monster thing. I think it's more so probably just a test car for the MR2, but either way, that's a cool idea, making a mid-engine GR Yaris monster thing, which if you think about it, that'd be a pretty cool successor to a Clio V6 in spirit. And if the Corolla and the Yaris are anything to go by, people will eat it up, that's for sure. A lot of cars these days, especially in that kind of segment, feel like they're almost becoming instant classics. Like you can just look at it and go, yeah, that car is going to be really expensive in a few years' time. Another one which to me was an instant prime example, the BMW 1M. Everyone loves the M2, but to me I've always found the 1M to be just a more interesting car, a cooler car. And those are so hard to find now, and they hold their value and increase in value really well. I just don't see the M2 having that same effect for whatever reason. And I think the Yaris and the Corolla, I think they're going to be the same. And like the Corolla, I don't think we've even got that, have we, in the UK? I don't think we have the GR Corolla. Oh, yeah, the GR Corolla. We've got the Yaris. See a decent amount of them around. And for some reason, this is a cool thing as well, something about Toyota's either marketing or their clientele manages to buy a car which for all intents and purposes should be an absolute chav chariot, but doesn't have that image. Whereas if you compare that to like a Mercedes A45 AMG, Mercedes is the last thing you would ever associate with a boy racer, and yet the A-Class is one of the boy racer cars here in the UK with the wings and the bright yellow paint and all that, and similar with the BMW M2. It's not really a car that should be a chav chariot, but it kind of does feel like one. A lot of like roadmen type car enthusiasts or talking about a stage 2 map and all that. It's that kind of buyer's car now. Whereas the Yaris, the idea of a wide-bodied, high-performance Yaris, that sounds as JDM max power as it gets, but somehow they've managed to kind of avoid that, which is pretty cool. And yeah, they really are dominating, which, again, fair play to Toyota. They would have been the last people I would have expected to go full 180 and start making awesome performance cars again. Because Honda, they've been pretty consistent, but Honda seems to be, I don't know, not necessarily losing their way, because that seems a bit harsh, but Honda hasn't really had any groundbreakers for a while. You know, the Civic Type R it's their Godzilla. It's the one that's just, it's the monster of a car. It's undeniable. Yeah, sure, that's all cool. But it feels like they refresh it every year. I know it's not quite, but it feels like they're just facelifting it all the time now. It's become basically a big old four-door sedan instead of a hatchback. And there's no S2000, there's no NSX anymore. That failed again, which is such a shame because it's such a cool car. And the new Prelude, people seem really disappointed by it, and I can't say I blame them, because it just looks like a fairly generic, like 2006 era kind of coupe. Almost like what you'd expect from, I don't know, like Hyundai or Kia, but in 2006, not today. But again, what do I know? I ain't Honda. Then again, Honda ain't Honda. They're struggling a bit more than before. They were, wasn't it Honda that was supposed to be, well, they were thinking about teaming up with Nissan, I think, but I seem to recall Nissan wanted too much of a stake or something, or too much control, so they said no. But yeah, and it's funny actually, you saying that, Jazz, a retro NSX, they're doing that, but not Honda. I can't remember who's doing it. I want to say it's like Bertoni or Ital Design or something weird like that, or Zagato. It's some brand like that, but they're doing an NSX Resta mod, like the Ferrari F355 Resta mod, and the Lotus Esprit Resta mod, and the Escort Mexico Resta mod. But yeah. And yeah, of all the companies that are familiar with high revving engines, you'd think Honda would do better in F1 and still be around, but who'd have thought there'd be a time when Honda and Renault isn't in F1 now, are they? You can tell I don't even follow it. Honda isn't in F1, I don't think, and now Cadillac is. Like, that's insane. If you'd have said that to people a few years ago, insanity. By default, the only team I have any interest in supporting just because it's Cadillac, and that's cool. I don't think they're going to win, but I'd support them in the same way that I used to like Spiker being in there. I never thought that Spiker would win, but I just love Spiker. And then you've got Caterham that are just kind of, I don't know, they get the gold star for turning up, I guess. But then again, who'd have thought that a company selling energy drinks would end up being one of the most recognisable faces in motorsport? Here we are. And I'm not even talking about Monster Energy. You could also say that about them. I mean Red Bull. Right. Such a missed opportunity not having a road-going version of that Cadillac hypercar. What a beast that would have been. It would have almost made up for them not making a road-going production version of the Cian and the 16. Because talk about a missed opportunity. If there was ever a chance of having cars like that, the early 2000s was about the last chance you had for a 7.5 litre V12 supercar and a 13.6 litre V16 limo. That sure as hell ain't happening now. That's a shame. If I had unlimited money, that would definitely be one of the things I'd try and do. I'd try and convince Cadillac to build me a second Cadillac 16 and do whatever's necessary to get it past a vehicle approval test to allow it to be road legal in the UK. You better believe I'll be taking that thing to plenty of shows. Well, our time is flying nicely. 125 laps down, we've got 15 laps of fuel left. I'll check the weather again in a second. Race has gone well. I mean, it's mixed. The race itself is good. The stream, on the other hand, Aiden, is a bit different. The stream crashed last week, halfway through the race, so I did the exit save, and we're continuing it from halfway. I 100% agree that WC is better than F1. And on the point of the Celica, somebody said, have we seen anything official yet? I don't think we've actually seen what the Celica is going to look like, have we? It's just renders and stuff. I love the idea of it coming back, though. I think it's a great idea. I'd be curious, I guess, to see if they have any rally plans for it, but even stuff like WRC, they seem more interested in hatchbacks now. Sure, I guess. That's not that crazy of an idea. The Ford Focus, even 20, 25 years ago, that was already when hatchbacks were starting to take over, I guess. So... right, okay. Interesting. I didn't even know Alonso was still in Formula 1, to be honest. I thought he was too old at this point. I thought he'd already left. I do like it when Formula 1 drivers branch out and do other stuff. Or not even just Formula 1. I like it when drivers in general have that multi-talent, which I guess isn't too surprising because a good driver generally is a consistently good driver across the board. So back in the day you'd have like, I can't remember who it was and I should remember his name, but the guy who was the MotoGP and Formula 1 champion of the time. And then you've got like Colin McRae, rally legend, but then he went to Le Mans and raced with the ProDrive Ferrari. I just think that's really cool. I think, didn't Sebastian Loeb, wasn't he at Le Mans as well, I want to say, I think? I can't remember what he was driving though. Right. The last piece of news I heard and paid attention to from Formula 1 was that Lewis Hamilton was with Ferrari. Is that still the case? And I remember they were really making a big deal about that. They had him like standing outside Ferrari with like a stupid looking coat on that looked like it should have been in the Jag advert. That was about the last piece of Formula 1 news I paid any attention to. It's funny, once you get to a certain level of money, to go back to what we were saying earlier on, and saying about Lewis Hamilton's coat reminded me of it, the Rolls-Royce boat tail, it's this certain level of money where it's weird. It's almost like money is a gauge, because gaining money should be infinite, because numbers are infinite, but it actually doesn't work that way if you look at it. If you look at somebody who's rich versus uber rich versus like whatever you want to call it, the higher you go, it's actually not just an escalation. It is very much a gauge that goes back around to the start again. Because at a certain point, you have so much money that you actually do lose taste again. And you start driving around stupid vehicles like the Rolls-Royce boat tail, or having ridiculous tasting clothes that no one would be seen in if they were literally homeless. Whereas I think if I were to be rich, if I could choose to be rich, I'd like to be that kind of rich where you can have a really cool car. I think I'd want to be Jay Leno rich, you know? Jay Leno is rich enough to have the most badass car collection and to maintain them, but still wear denim jackets and chat to people on the street like he's, you know, what he is, which is a person. That's the kind of rich that I like. That's the kind of fame that I like. When you're still an approachable, real person, not some, I'm standing outside of Ferrari and doesn't that matter to you in your personal life or you're trying to pay the bills. Actually, no, it doesn't. That level of fame and money, when you just get almost huffing on your own farts level of rich, I'm good. I noticed people mentioning batteries and stuff with Formula 1. I feel like Formula E is more interesting to me if you're going to go down that route to Formula 1. If you're going to go down the electric kind of route, just go all in. At least you've got teams like Maserati and that in there. I don't know if they still are, but... Yeah, I mean, exactly. Because you're buying that because it's a car that you love, because it's a part, as you said, of your childhood. Like, you would share that in common with my dad. My old man's favourite car was the Mazda 787B, and it was because of Gran Turismo. And he was like 50 at the time. Did he care if that car wasn't like the most beautiful thing around? He didn't care. It didn't even enter his mind. He just liked the car. My dad's favourite cars he ever had tended to be ones that like boxes. His favourite car he ever owned was a Volvo. He had a 244DL from 1977, and it was his favourite car because it was comfortable. He just liked it because it was comfortable. So I know for a fact he would have loved my taste in cars because I drive giant Americans. That would have been exactly the kind of thing he would love. But yeah, it's like, buy what you like, which I guess you could argue is what these uber rich people are doing. But even then, part of me secretly goes, I don't think so. I don't think these people actually want, or even do in their normal life, dress as if they're going down the catwalk, which is what most of them look like for these photo shoots. I think they're just doing it because that a stylist is telling them to, I guess. I don't know. Some PR team or some idiot who's got a job that shouldn't exist and is trying to justify their existence. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah, the Mazda sounds awesome. Saw a quick video, I think it was yesterday, where somebody was recording at Road Atlanta. There was a 787B and a 767 going around, back to back around the track, and it just sounded monstrous. I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure I've seen the 787B in person, but I don't recall if I heard it. It might have been a... Actually, I don't know if it was a 787. I think I saw the 767. And it was at Goodwood. But I can't remember if I actually heard it run. I don't think I did. Because I feel like I'd remember if I did. And that's a funny thing as well, because you technically can, in many cases, own some of these cars that would otherwise be in museums, because a lot of them people actually do privately own, like almost as caretakers. So you can do that, which is pretty fun. Nice. Yeah, I want to say in the video that I saw, it wasn't Road Atlanta though, it was Road America. The Mazda was the blue and white livery version. And on that point, Jazzy, there's no reason now why the Furai couldn't come back, because Forza's got it. Forza's brought it back. So clearly you don't need a perfect, non-burned working model to get the car back. So if they wanted it back, it could be back. It would fall into the same problem as the Zonda R, unfortunately, which is that there's not that much to do with it. As far as the JGTC stuff, or Super GT in general, I wish they'd just give us more variation. I want more GT300. In fact, I want any GT300. We have so little of that end of the Super GT spectrum that it's virtually non-existent. Whereas, like, we're supposed to be getting some, but, you know, the Autobacks, or not the Autobacks Garaya, or the Aspara-Drink RX-7, or the Wed Sport Lexus, the Subaru. There were some awesome cars in GT300. Even back in the day, you had stuff like Mercedes in there, I believe, if I recall correctly. You had the Viper in there, McLaren was in there, Mosler even ran in GT300. And meanwhile, we've got a Lexus SC430. Whoop-de-doo! A car which in road-going form is, like, known for being a car that nobody's that interested in. But here's the racing one, and suddenly you're supposed to be super interested in it. And it's fine, you know, it's not a bad car, but... yeah, so I'd like to see a bit more variation in there, really. For a while, people kept saying to me that I should check out Project Motor Racing, and then that went real quiet. Didn't the game have some, like, major issues or something? I didn't follow it, but... and I guess, yeah, that would be more so on the like modelling and the sound kind of thing, but the thing is, when Gran Turismo or Forza or whoever want to add a car to the game, they don't need the owner's permission, they have the manufacturer's permission, because it's the manufacturer who has the license and, you know, the rights to the car. They don't actually need to drive the car, that's where the owner would come in. Where it would be helpful is if the owner allowed them to map the car and record the sound of the car, for sure, but in most cases there tends to be more than one, and so they could just go to somebody else. So it really would be in the case of something like a Mazda Furai where that would be a problem because the car doesn't exist anymore. If, on the other hand, you had some legit one-of-one vehicle, so for example, if, I don't know, let's say Polyphony wanted to bring the R390 back, which I think they probably will, there's at least one guy who's got an R390, in fact I think there are two, who have road-going versions of Nissan R390s. One of them is in Pennzoil livery, which I believe was actually, in fact it was, one of the drivers who actually raced it at Le Mans, and if I recall correctly, because he did a video, and I think in the video he said that he told Nissan not to pay him, he just wanted to keep the car. And that's a hell of a deal, because boy is that car worth something now. And the other guy, I'm not sure, I think it's just like a private buyer, had a white R390, which I think was converted to road use, and it has a red spoiler. So let's say Polyphony, for example, wanted to bring that back to the game. They could ask those owners, you know, could we map the car, could we record the sound, because they'd probably have a better chance of doing that than going to the Nissan museum and get them to rev that up. Maybe they would. You know, it's Nissan, they've got a good relationship, but, you know, as an example, sometimes it could ironically be easier to talk to the owner, even for a prestige car. Right, cool. And I believe the video I watched of his was when he recently took it to that snow driving event. I don't recall what it was, but he was like slip sliding the R390 around, which looked awesome. I'll say recent, it was probably months ago now. But also that's the kind of rich that I think is fun as well. Again, to go back to Jay Leno and these kind of guys, I would never want to be rich to the point where I'm scared of using my own cars because I care more about their value than the enjoyment. Almost like a painting or something. I just think that's stupid. Because if the car loses some value because it's got 20 miles on the clock instead of none, screw it, you know? If you can afford to get that car in the first place, don't worry about it. At the moment, I believe they are closest with Toyota, and they seem pretty close to Porsche as well. It used to be pretty clearly Nissan, but not so much now. So yeah, I believe it's Toyota that they're closest with. But I think they've always had a pretty good relationship with virtually all of the Japanese brands, which isn't too surprising, really. I think that Forza, in a similar sense, being American, has a pretty good relationship with the American brands. Yeah, because even back in GT6, for example, the GT300 cars were pretty OP once you modified them. You could get the Goriah to, like, what was it, 680 horsepower or something like that. It turned it into like a baby LMP car. And isn't GT500, or I believe they at least were considering, again I don't follow all the news so they might have decided either way, but weren't they basically going to have it as an extension of DTM or vice versa, because the rulebooks were either essentially the same or were becoming the same? And you can tell, I mean, just look at modern DTM, it's virtually the same thing. Again, I miss the older era of DTM. They used to have the bigger body kits, they were crazier looking silhouette cars, the old Vectra and the Astra and the Alpha 155 if you go even further back. Now it's just kind of like, oh, it's an M3, it's got slightly wider body kit. Cool. They basically just look like GT3 cars now. Everything's just so homogenized these days. Right. Oh, okay. So it's GT3, not GT500. Interesting. Well, I guess that makes sense as to why I said it basically looks like a GT3 as well, then. At least I wasn't just imagining that. But yeah, like I said, if I had the kind of cash to be driving around in supercars, you better believe I'd be taking them to all of the shows. And even with the cars that I've already got, you know, my Lincoln is the only one in England. There are more Lincolns, but there's only one like mine. There's only one 68 coupe. I still let anyone sit in it at shows and meets, because what's the point in having a cool car, regardless of how much it's worth, regardless of how rare it is, if nobody else is going to enjoy it? There's really kind of three reasons, I think, to buy a cool car. Number one is if you're a driver and you want to drive a car and get that form of enjoyment. You're probably like a Lotus kind of guy, you know, that sort of thing. Then the second group is people who want to show off, which is a lot these days. Finance yourself a Lamborghini or a McLaren. Those people are pretty easy to spot. They tend to have surprisingly minimal imagination. They tend to drive a lot of the same things, even though they could probably finance something that's a lot more interesting if they actually thought about it. And then there's group number 3, which is people who love cars because they are almost kind of reliving their childhood, but also making the next generation of us. And I'm definitely in that third camp. I love knowing that some kid who's now maybe 6 or 7, who just stood on the seat of my Lincoln and played with the steering wheel like he's driving the car, 10 years from now, he's going to have a memory of going to some random car show that he won't remember where it was, he won't remember what the car was, but he'll have this memory of standing in a cool car and, you know, it was cool and it sounded cool, and he won't remember what it was or whatever else, but that will have a formative part in his petrolhead story, in the same way that we all have our own kind of stories, not necessarily similar to that, but that kind of thing that we grew up with. Maybe it was your dad standing you on the seat and pretending to drive, or you went to some show and saw a car that changed your mind or your outset. Maybe for many of us it's playing Gran Turismo. For me, the Espace F1 back in Gran Turismo 2, for example. Those kind of things being passed on and created for new people, not just the next generation, but, you know, people in general. It delights me to no end driving around a ridiculous flaming hearse and seeing the smiles on people's faces, because it's the stupidest thing they've ever seen, but also the coolest thing they've ever seen. And to me, that's just more fun. And I love showing up at shows knowing that my cars tend to be the cheapest things there, and yet they still attract more attention than a Lambo or a Ferrari or whatever else. That's awesome. I love that, because there's nothing pretentious about it. It's almost this weird classic effect. I've talked about this before. I'll probably talk about it again because I forget, but you could have 2 guys in 2 Ferraris show up to the same car show. One guy shows up in a brand new Ferrari, whatever, let's say a 488 when that was brand new. And everyone looks at it, looks away and thinks, daddy's money financing. Which is unfair, because maybe the guy bought it after years of hard work, but let's be honest, that's what most people think. Second guy drives in, and he's in a $60 million 250 GTO. The GTO is older, slower, worse through corners, and should be significantly more pretentious given the amount of money that's been spent on it, and yet has the total opposite effect. No one thinks they're pretentious. In fact, quite the opposite. Most people would go, wow, good on that guy for using that car and not keeping it in his house or in his garage. It's a really weird phenomenon that happens, and it's not just with classics, but it's definitely a distinct advantage to classic cars. In a funny kind of way, it's almost like nostalgia is more powerful than... I feel like I'm onto a thought then, and I can't quite place it. Nostalgia is more powerful than... I don't know, more powerful than performance? It's more powerful than cred? I don't know what I want to compare it to, but nostalgia is king. And companies know that, but they use it to benefit in the wrong way. They use it to bring back stupid names like the Ford Capri and use it to make an EV out of it instead. That's the wrong use of nostalgia. You should be using nostalgia to make people fall in love with your brand again, not to feel like a gimmick. And to me, those are 2 distinctly different ways of using nostalgia. And it seems like everyone these days doesn't have a clue how to do their job, because they sure as hell don't know how to use nostalgia, that's for sure. But hey, what do I know? I'm just an idiot driving a fake bunch of pixels pretending that I'm in a race. But I tell you what I do know. I know that I built a car in 11 months with the help of 5 other guys and a lot of money, and that car attracted more attention than a $28 million Rolls-Royce boat tail. That's for damn sure. So I guess my opinion should count for something, because I did do that. Yeah, too many bean counters, too many accountants, too many corporate heads, too many people who failed upwards, too many people who are only there because they worked in some high position in a food company or something, and then they just moved straight across to something different. I don't know, maybe they wanted to expand their portfolio, or they just wanted a new challenge, or whatever, I don't know. But yeah, there's so little passion And because there's so little passion, where there is passion, it really stands out. It's why brands like Pagani and Horatio Pagani are just incredible that he even manages to still exist and manages to still make cars like that, and he hasn't lost his passion. You could say what you will about maybe not liking the cars as much. For me, nothing will ever surpass the Zonda F, for example, but still, I love the fact that he's still doing his thing. I adore the fact that Spiker is coming back and that they're making an 800 horsepower V8 that has no electrical, no hybrid system. It's a pure supercar. I think that's fantastic news, and it's handmade. Pardon me. But yeah, all of these brands that manage to survive and thrive, good on them. Good on them. Yeah. And I actually made a prediction. Yeah, didn't Pagani make a Zonda for Hamilton as well? Wasn't that the Zonda H or the HH or something like that? Was that the one he crashed? Or was it Hamilton who crashed a Zonda? Or was that Alonso? I can't remember. Somebody crashed a Zonda. But on the point of what was your other comment now? I can't remember what that other comment below was. I was going to comment on it. And it's gone, it's lost forever like a flock of doves. An hour and 20 left. I feel like starting this, or not starting, but continuing this race a bit earlier in the day has also helped a bit. It doesn't drag as much. I feel like when the daylight starts to go, that's when I really feel like, come on, let's get on with this. It's when I wish you could have B-Spec and put it on three times speed. Oh, yes. Thanks for reminding me. Yes, you said about the Mustang EV. I made the Mach-E, that is, isn't it? Yeah. Which, again, the Mach-E, to me, makes it all the more strange. When you've already got the Mach-E, and you've already ruined that idea, why do you also need to make a Capri EV? It feels like they're just tailoring to kind of the same audience, and I don't really understand the difference. I get that there's kind of a difference, but really not much. Anyway, the point I was going to make is, on Twitter a while ago, we need the Senna. Yeah, I think the Senna's probably going to come at some point. Don't trauma dump. Well, see, here's the problem. The answer I would say to those guys is, okay then, if you don't want me to trauma dump, why'd you call it a Mustang? Because by calling it a Mustang, you're trying to appeal to people who know what that means, what that represents. Except the people who know what that means and know what that represents are going to hate you for it. The people who like it, who love electric cars, who love modern cars, don't have an idea what a Mustang represents. They've never watched Bullet. They don't know what a Mustang is. So who's this for? And that's been my argument with the Capri. So if you want to blame the customer, you really need to check out yourself first, because the customer didn't choose to name it. And I feel like if the customer had named it, they'd have probably asked you to call it something that was like a total failure in the past, or maybe just be generous and call it, like, I don't know, a Taurus or something. Just call it a Taurus and make that an EV instead, because who would care at that point? But my prediction for the Mustang, apparently, and this doesn't surprise me at all, Ford is thinking of branching Mustang into its own brand. Which, when I heard, I immediately rolled my eyes, because it seems like everyone is doing that these days, like Seat with Cupra. I could see Volkswagen making GTI its own brand, as dumb as that would be. If they do that, I actually think it kind of makes sense, because the Mustang already wears the Mustang badge as kind of its own thing, rather than a Ford badge, more often than not anyway. But also, I have a prediction, which I hope they don't do, but I could kind of see it happening. If they branch off Mustang into its own thing, and I think I've said this before, I could see them having at least 3 cars in the lineup. I could see them having the Mustang, like the traditional, the Mach-E as a crossover SUV nonsense rubbish hairdryer, and here's my prediction: I think they're going to make a Mustang sedan, a saloon. I think they're going to make a 4-door Mustang, which, as stupid as it sounds, if it's still got a V8, I kind of wouldn't hate the idea of the modern shape with 4 doors. I think I actually might even like it more than the modern Mustang. I think it would kind of be cool. Corvette. Yeah, I mean, there's the funny thing. Corvette is the exact same scenario, except Corvette did it ahead of the curve. They did it like, what was it, back in the mid to late 2000s, I think they branched off, and like the C6 Corvette became, its own brand. I have no problem with that, because to me Corvette kind of already felt like its own brand. It was already like the racing wing. It's almost like how you could say Cortina. Yeah. You could almost say that Viper could have been its own brand, you know? Because, sure, it's a Dodge, and it's a great ambassador for Dodge, but it was partially also called the Chrysler Viper part of the time, and Viper could have been its own thing. It had the Viper badge as its own thing, so I wouldn't have been opposed to Viper just being its own thing. And I feel like they did try to do that, didn't they, kind of, by calling it the SRT Viper as well. But you know what I mean, like, I fundamentally don't hate the idea of Mustang being its own thing. I just think you've got to use that wisely. Because, by definition, it's a risky move, because if you branch it out and then just have one car, well, then what's the point? Whereas if you're going to branch it out to more than one car, now you're going to make some choices. The reason why I think a four-door Mustang actually could work is because if you think about it, they sort of already did that. It was just called a Ford Falcon in Australia, and that's pretty much a four-door Mustang. I know it isn't, it's more like a Taurus or whatever underneath, or that equivalent. But it's pretty close. You've got like the big American style, all torquey V8, kind of has a similar kind of vibe, so I think it could work if they did it right. I haven't heard news about a Viper. I have said before, though, that I definitely think the Viper will return. Probably in Avengers. But if the Viper does come back, I don't know. I feel like if the Viper came back, they'd need to maybe pivot with it. Yeah, that's a good point. Be a great rival to a Hellcat. Because I feel like it doesn't really rival the Challenger very well. The Challenger feels like it's kind of doing its own thing. From what I've heard, stuff like the Demon and all that, which are very clearly designed to be straight-line dragsters. The Mustang isn't really going towards that. The Mustang's more focused on like Nürburgring lap times and all that, which is cool. You know, fair play to them. It's very, very quick. Almost more like a Corvette approach, and the Camaro I would say is more like the Mustang approach as well, more track focused, not so much on the straight line, apart from maybe like Coppo Camaros. As far as a Viper goes, I feel like they might need to do what Corvette did, but I think they might need to do it because Corvette did, and pivot. Because now that the Corvette's mid-engine, its whole personality feels kind of different. It feels more like kind of a supercar, whereas I never considered a Corvette to be a supercar before. Even the ZR1, I wouldn't call it a supercar. It's a super sports car, maybe, and still very much like a muscle car at heart. Whereas a Viper, I think a Viper is more like a hot rod in a sports car body, and it's all the better for it. Whereas if you brought it back, it doesn't really have many rivals. I missed the bottom comment because I was reading the top one, so if you want to type that again, because I missed it. But yeah, drop in the power from cars, in my opinion, especially for some reason with Ferraris. I guess that says something about how Ferraris setting up their cars these days. It makes them a lot more drivable. I did, in a special projects, I made a fictional Ferrari Dino, and I basically took the 296 GTB and I turned it into what I thought it should have been, a modern day Ferrari Dino, and I halved the power. I took it from like 800 horsepower, which has always been stupid for that car in my opinion. That does not look like a car that should have the power of a Koenigsegg, nor does it look like it could handle it. And then GRGT Toyota. Oh, right, yeah, I'll return to that point. I dropped it down to like 487 horses, pretty much like an F430. To me, that's exactly what a Dino could be now, and it felt so much better to drive. As far as the Toyota goes, I'm a bit mixed. I love the fact that they've got that kind of Toyota supercar. I do, however, wish that the Supra had been called the Celica, and that they'd have kept the Supra name and called this a Supra instead, to make it like a Nissan GTR tier kind of thing. Such as it is, I'm curious to see how the Lexus version, or the Lexus equivalent, compares. Doubtless it will be good in racing, or at least a very good contender. But visually speaking, not a fan. I don't really like the look of the GRGT. And yeah, it does seem like a lot of people are chasing numbers these days. I also think it's a real shame what happened to SSC with the Tutara. People seem to be loving the fact that they either lied or got their speed wrong when they thought they'd done, what was it, 300 and 316 miles an hour or something, which people joke about, but I mean, China's just built a car that does 304, so it's not exactly outside the realm of possibility that an American supercar of all things would do that. But whatever the reason, they either got it wrong by mistake or they lied about it. Whichever, the car, the Tuatara, was later tested at 290, so it's hardly a slow vehicle by any stretch. And yet it just disappeared off the face of the earth. People just completely lost interest in the car, which is such a shame. It's a beast of a car. Flat plane crank, they've made track-focused versions. I think it's a stunningly good-looking car. Yeah, the U9's probably safer than a Rimac, yeah. But yeah, I've always rooted for... Well, that's a lie. Since changing and liking the Ultimate Aero, I've since rooted for SSC, and I actually like SSC more than the other hypercar brands. The SSC Ultimate Aero is one of my dream cars. But the Tuatara, yeah, such a shame what happened with that story, because it should be a beloved car, and people really just dropped off after that whole fiasco. And yes, Cadillac does. I feel like now is probably more chance than ever, because CTS-V came out initially around the same time that the Cian and the 16 weren't produced, around 2004. And then ever since then, the CTS-V has just gone from strength to strength. ATS-V was the STS-V, which is ultra rare. Even now the Escalade V, I wanted one of those for so many years. I wish they would build one, and now they finally have. I don't know. I don't tend to follow the finance stuff as much with brands, so I can't honestly say. I've heard many bad business things about Hennessy, that they apparently like take parts off of other customers' cars to build other cars if the customers paid more, kind of like what was being said about Porsche earlier on. I don't know. I hope not, but with smaller brands, I can believe it. But yeah. Well, I tell you what, I know which I'd rather have between a Koenigsegg Jesko and a Yang Wang. Somebody really needs to teach these Chinese brands about marketing, because their cars just have utterly ridiculous names. Like, yeah, it can do 300 miles an hour, but when it's called like the Samsung Butt Wipe Moonblood Sunrise 10,000, who cares? Nobody wants to show up to the Met Gala, or, you know, well, actually they probably would show up to the Met Gala, but nobody would want to show up to like the Goodwood Festival of Speed or Jay Leno's Garage and something like that. You want to show up in a Zonda with half the power. I don't know, yeah, the whole EV thing is a weird one, because I follow it vaguely, and yes, Koenigsegg is long overdue to appear. I said before, I think the Agera probably has the best chance, either that or a Jesko. But the funny thing about EVs, and I feel like some petrol heads don't know this, but electric cars aren't new. And I don't mean like, oh yeah, there were some in the 80s. I mean like 1910s. There were electric cars already, as well as like steam cars and everything else. The reason why they died out, even though people bought them, is because petrol just won out. People just bought more gas cars, as Yanks would call them. And then there was no need for electric cars. So it's always been around, but it's just one of those almost dead technologies for a good long while. And now that it's come back, you've got the associated problems there, which is that unlike diesel, which has been around for basically the whole time, so it had that steady flow of development and improvement and learning curve of not centuries, but decades and decades of experience, electric just doesn't have that advantage. So you've gone from having it in the dawn of the car to mostly dropping off with the occasional weird little, you know, Chevy hybrid or whatever back in the day, to now just full-blown, full steam ahead, ridiculously weighty battery packs that will roast your family alive on the freeway, and stupid price tags because of these rare earth metals and stuff. It's just gone to the extreme. And if you'd have said to Jaguar 20 years ago, guess what Jaguar's going to be in 2027, they would have laughed at you. They would have said, do you think we're mad? Do you think we would axe our entire range and put to bed our most iconic names like XJ Sovereign and XKR and call our new vehicle the Type 01, make it look like a literal Lego brick, and make it electric with no rear window, So you rely completely on rear view cameras, which can also brake, and just make it more expensive than a Bentley. And make it the only car we offer, so that there's no choice among the range. It's either you're uber rich or we're not interested. They would have laughed at you. They would have said, are you dumb? That sounds like the worst decision ever, and that's exactly what they're doing. No, I'm sure they'll say we've got plans for other ones, but I just think it's unforgivable what a brand like Jaguar is doing, and I actually have way... Yeah, the ad was ridiculous. I think, and this seems to be a bit of a hot take to some degree, but I actually feel worse for Jaguar, or not really for Jaguar, but for their employees, really, because they didn't deserve this. But I feel worse for Jaguar employees than I do for Lotus employees, because I know that a lot of people hate what Lotus is now, but I kind of do like the fact that, say what you will about electric, Lotus really was swinging for the fences. You know, the Avia is a 2,000 horsepower monster of a car, and it is the fastest accelerating production car you can buy. So it's not just, you know, or it was, it's probably not anymore, but it's not just a gimmick. You know, it actually is that fast. It has the numbers to back it up. And in my opinion, is actually quite a stunning looking car as well. Certainly a very futuristic one in a BMW i8 kind of way. Say what you will about an SUV, I also happen to like that one quite a lot, but people seem to have more of an issue with Lotus's ownership now, being like Geely, so it's essentially Chinese. I have more issue with what Jag is doing than Lotus, because at least Lotus is still trying. They still have some combustion engines, you know, like I said, the hypercar. I think they're making a brilliant... Oh yeah, the classic Jag employees would annihilate the modern employees. But yeah, I think that Lotus also has something which Jaguar seems to not have, which is self-awareness. Because even though Lotus now is not what Lotus was, say what you will about that, I give them more leeway there for the exact same reason as Porsche. If 20 years ago you'd have said, hey Porsche, you're going to make a 4x4 and it's going to be the best choice you ever do because it's going to save the brand and make you into a bigger brand than ever, they'd have said, no thanks, we make sports cars. And yet that was a fantastic choice. And the Cayenne is a pretty universally known for being, or is a pretty universally considered, ugly car. And yet it still worked, because it was fast. It delivered where it mattered, which was Porsche performance. With Lotus, they have the performance, and I don't think it's the performance, and I don't think it's Lotus that's holding it back. I think it's just the price point of that kind of electric car that's putting people off. Because most people who are environmentally conscious and want to buy a car that they're going to keep for a long time and want, you know, dealer support and infrastructure, they ain't going to buy a Lotus. They're going to buy a Mercedes. Or they're going to buy a Tesla, because you just have so much more dealership support, so much more, you know, they'll buy it because so many other people have already. Whereas Lotus, they sold like 30 Lotus Elitres in an entire year. But on the point that I was saying, at least they are trying to learn from some of their mistakes and improve them. For example, the Lotus SUV. Pardon me. The Lotus SUV, the Elitre, I really want to drive an Elitre. I was supposed to review one, and that didn't work out, unfortunately, but they have announced that they're adding a hybrid version instead of a full EV. So it's actually going to have a range, I think it's a range-extending petrol-burning engine. I think that is a brilliant move, because you've already got the platform, you've already got a great-looking car, it is definitely not an oversaturated car, which actually works to your benefit, because it means that people aren't going to be sick of seeing it, because you don't see many of them around. And I think that having that extra range, the lack of range anxiety, being able to fill up your car at the petrol pump and using that as more of a dependable approach, it will also potentially allow the car to have maybe even a noise to it. The performance should still be great because it's a 900 horsepower car. Anyway, I think that's a smart move. So we will up again about their success or lack of it so far, but at least they're trying to fix it. They're trying to give people more of what they want. And on the other hand, you still have, what is it, not the Amiya, the smaller one, the sports car that still has a normal engine. They're still doing that. You know, it's still a bit more of a traditional kind of approach. And I think they'll probably do more like that in future. They'll try to. They might even say, certain companies, oh, we're now going to do combustion again. Sure, we'll see you in 10 minutes when you do the next one. Jag, I don't know. Jag's problem isn't that it's electric. The best electric car I've ever driven was a Jag. I drove the I-Pace, and it was great. They ended up being recalled because they were catching on fire, but in terms of driving it, it was really fun. It actually was a nice place to be. I drove a Tesla, and I drove an I-Pace, and the Jag was a way nicer car. So having an electric car in their range I don't think is the problem. Putting all your eggs in one basket and then calling the consumer stupid for not agreeing with that, that's your problem. And Jaguar so far just seems so either completely bull-headed to try and save face, and I think the only reason why they're trying to do that is because they really are trying to stick it out and appeal to those super rich people and not show a sign of weakness by backing down. I think that's a really dumb choice to make. Or I think maybe kind of like how what was it, Sweet Baby Inc. was getting involved in a lot of stuff. I'm sure they're still around with a different name, but they were getting involved in a lot of games and pushing, you know, all this DEI nonsense. You know, you got to have this in your game, you got to have that in your game. You got to make everyone a soy cuck, and it feels like they've got people like that at Jaguar. And maybe they have entered some kind of contract and they can't get out of it now, and that would really suck. That would suck even more for the employees. Because imagine working at a company that you probably grew up loving. Imagine you grew up loving the XJ220 and you thought, you know what, I'd love to work for Jaguar. That'd be cool, making aluminium-bodied XJs and F-type SVRs, and our engines are going to be so badass that even Range Rover's going to put them in their 4x4s and make some of the coolest 4x4s around, the SVR. And now this, you would be distraught, let alone the fact that it's your livelihood. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's any hope left for Jaguar, because they are just full steam ahead. And when I say full steam ahead, they are full steam ahead not in the way of like making their way across the American frontier. They are full steam ahead in the Wile E. Coyote off a cartoon cliff, and they just don't seem to be applying the brakes anytime soon. And hey, if that's what they want to do, then frankly they deserve to fail. Whereas Lotus, at least they're trying. Say what you will about Chinese ownership, I don't really care who owns them. You could say that all day long about all different brands. You know, McLaren used BMW engines in the F1, and many of us love that car. So I don't mind different countries getting involved. Just, I don't know, just try and give the customer what they want, combined with a little bit of what the customer doesn't know they want yet. Whereas Jaguar seems completely in that end, except nobody wants it. I don't know. Oh, and I only just noticed, under an hour. 1 hour remaining. Speaking of McLaren. Yeah, what McLaren would I want to see? I feel like probably, to go way back earlier in this stream, I would probably choose like a 70s McLaren Grand Prix car. I think that'd be really cool, because we don't have that kind of wedge era, like I said. Realistically, I would put my money on either a McLaren Solus, I've said that before because of the VGT connection, or if they were to listen to the fans, because a lot of people seem to really, really like the car. And I guess you could also say, based on GT6, Gran Turismo has a lot of love for him as well, Senna. The Senna is, I think, a pretty strong call. Not a car I've ever liked, really. I think that that name deserves to be on a significantly faster car than that. But sure, it would be quick if it were in the game. If I could choose a modern McLaren, I think it would be between two. I've always thought it was strange that we don't have the normal P1 in the game. I find that very odd, because you've got the LaFerrari, you've got the LaFerrari, you've got the Porsche, and then the P1 that we've got is the GTR, which is awesome, but doesn't really make any sense, because the only rival for that is, I guess, the Zonda R, which also doesn't really make any sense, because it doesn't really feel like those are rivals. So I'd say P1 would make a lot of sense. Yeah, BMW is just forgotten. They're just totally forgotten. And they're also overdue a Group 3 upgrade. I would actually choose either the P1 or the Speedtail. I actually think the Speedtail could be quite an interesting one to see in GT. It might be a little bit more favoured to Le Mans or Special Stage Route X, but I do like the Speedtail. It's kind of to me, it's one of the few modern McLarens that I think does a good balance of nostalgia throwback to the F1 long tail, but also combining it with the modern advancements in performance and tech that McLaren have seen. And yeah, I would think that the M4 would be the logical choice for a race car. Unfortunately, probably the Peppa Pig spec. But yeah, and the McLaren, the 720 is the one that I would suggest being a Group 3 choice. I don't really like the 720, I've never liked that car. I think it almost looks like a McLaren rip-off of a Pagani Huayra. But as a race car, that would make a lot of sense. The 650S is a bit long in the tooth. A lot of the Group 3s are long in the tooth. Remember a few months ago, only just a few mere morsels of a moment ago, when I thought that we were going to have more Group 3 cars and perhaps even more Group 4s throughout 2026. So much for that, eh? I'm sure we will get more, but it was looking like we might have some kind of consistency to that, but I should have known better. It's polyphony after all. Group 4, I mean, I'd like to think so, but I guess if the current trajectory is anything to go by, not necessarily. They might stagger it, because we had the Hyundai recently, but the Hyundai Group 3 hasn't been updated. And then we had the Porsche updated, but not Group 4. So I could see him doing like one or the other. And for McLaren, I don't know, I feel like for McLaren, you could actually make an update out of just McLaren. You could even just make it specifically out of the 720 if you wanted to. You could have the 720S road car, the 720 like GT4, let's say, and a 720 GT3. I'd be personally quite bored of that, but you could do it. I don't think they would. They seem quite opposed to making really strict themed packs like that, which actually appeals to me more. Anyone who follows special projects will know that I do like to keep it quite eclectic, which is personally how I prefer it. But you could do that. I actually think that Bentley would make a lot of sense, if you think about it. If they brought back a Bentley Continental GT, especially the V8 generation, the newer one, that's prime for a Group 4 car. Stripped out, give it the Veyron treatment, and then there is already a GT3 Bentley, so there you go, job done. And the Speed 8 is a legend. We got that for Group 1. Why not? It shouldn't really be in Group 1. It should be more like a Group 2B, really. But actually, where would they put the Bentley? I feel like they kind of have to put it in Group 1 by default, but it shouldn't really be in there, because it's not quite new enough to be like the Peugeot 908, but it is newer and probably quicker than the Toyota GT1, which is in Group 2. So I feel like the Bentley doesn't really fit either way, and I do wonder if maybe that's why Polyphony is avoiding a lot of those cars. Because if you think about it, we don't really have many of those at all from the LMP 900 and early LMP1 kind of era. The Audi R8, despite being a legend, isn't there. The Bentley isn't there. The BMW V12 LMR, kind of the cusp of that era, isn't there. Which is a shame, but that might be why. If they feel like they don't fit into the classes properly, then that could be part of the reason. Either that or they're just saving it to be trailer cars in the next game. Check the weather. I keep saying about checking the weather, and I don't. Yep, weather's looking fine. Nothing is even close. Well, kind of, but not really. And on the subject of real cars, a subject which I technically wasn't on, but it wasn't mine. I've been thinking of doing a little bit of work to the hearse in real life as well, because The Yanks do like to run hot because of their iron engines, which I've always found strange. I don't understand how an American car... Yeah, that'd be a great car as well. I also think it would struggle in the classes, but yeah. I don't understand how an American car, especially one like my hearse, which has come from California for 60 years, how on earth can that car be overheating in England? On our hottest summer day, when it gets to like 30 degrees Celsius, that's hot for us, maybe even a little bit higher occasionally, but very, very rarely. That's still not California, and California's like all year round. So I don't understand how American cars can run hot here. So I've been thinking about giving her a bonnet scoop, but it's basically between three choices. Either like a dragster style scoop, like a forward facing, which would look cool, but also you can't really see past them very well. A rearward facing scoop, more like a drag car to let the heat out, kind of lump. I'm sure there's an official name for it, but the ones that look more like a wedge. That I think would make more sense, because with her overheating, it's not really an issue of airflow. It's Dodge Ram is a very obvious one to have, given the Ford is in there and the Toyota as well. So yeah, it's strangely lacking. Or option number 3 is to just drill some holes through the bonnet, kind of like louvers. Obviously, that's the easiest way of doing it. And I also already have a metal bore drill bit, which is, I don't know, I think it's maybe 2.5 inch across, something like that. So you can bore a decent sized hole out of the bonnet at a time. And I'm thinking of maybe just doing like 2 rows of 4 straight above the air intake, or straight above the air box, which is plastic anyway. It's the original 67 air filter, air cleaner. So rain getting on it wouldn't matter. And just having like 8 outlet holes to represent the V8 as well. And then it kind of does a bit of both, because if you've just got holes in the bonnet, that allows the airflow in, and if you're stuck in traffic, it allows the heat out. So it kind of does a bit of both, really. But I'm not sure. It's one of those things where once I've done it, that's kind of it. You can't go back then, not without extensively reworking the bonnet to fix it. So I've got a bit of trepidation. Trepidation? Why does that word sound wrong? Trepidation. Whatever. I think that's the right word, it just sounds weird in my head. Chevy and Dodge has a VGT and not Ford. Well, Ford was supposed to. If you go back to GT6, there is the Ford menu, and the Ford actually does show a design in the background, which, funnily enough, I was always pretty keen on seeing that arrive, because from the sketch, it looks a lot like the Ford Indigo concept, which was kind of like an open wheel car, which would have been really cool. I almost imagine it being probably electric, unfortunately, but imagine even if it were, imagine kind of like a Tron sort of car, like maybe hubless electric motor in the wheels, all-wheel drive Indy car kind of thing, but like an old Indy car, like a 50s and 60s Indy car. I think that'd be pretty cool. Light up wheels, again like Tron. But yeah, nothing's really come of it so far. But there's a few brands like that haven't really happened. Alfa Romeo was supposed to have one. There are sketches of those out there as well. And I'd love to see more trucks for sure. I'd even take like trucks that aren't entirely necessary. I've actually been considering a truck in real life. I'd love like an old, at the moment, the one which I've got my eye on, or kind of looking at ones on the market, and I certainly shouldn't be looking at one because I don't need to get rid of the Navigator, but something about just a giant American truck really appeals to me, especially like with a massive diesel engine. I really like the idea of either an F250 or an F350, just massive. And it would be like XLT, King Cab, I want dually tyres and giant arches, and it would have to have 6 seats, preferably an automatic, because there's no way I'm driving a manual that's that big. What's the point? Yeah, I don't know, 7.5 litre V8 or something stupid like that. Diesel, of course. But yeah, just put something like that in the game, which technically Forza did. They've got the... I always want to call it the F350, but it might be an F250. Whichever it is, it's the Platinum, and it's got the 6.7 diesel. And that's really fun to have in the game. It's not that quick, of course, but it's super fun. So yeah, I'd love stuff like that. Some classic truck, or like a really old, like step-side Chevy, that kind of thing. Group B is completely forgotten. Yeah, I feel like Polyphony likes to workshop things in motion. And what I mean by that is they'll kind of release something and then tweak it as it goes. Oh yeah. I think it was wasn't one of those cancelled? I think, wasn't it the Jordan that was cancelled? I think, but whatever. Can't remember what I was saying again now. It's gone. I was saying something about a big truck. Can't remember what it was after that. Oh yeah, you were saying about classes and categories. Group B to me is the most egregious, not even just because of the cars, it's because there's so little to actually do with even the cars that we've already got. Over the course of special projects, for example, I've done so many rally builds, and so many of them are really fun to drive, but there's nothing to do with them. It's just the same events over and over again, because it's the same tracks over and over again. But that's Gran Turismo. They've kind of always had rally in the back of their minds, unfortunately, which is odd given how many rally cars Gran Turismo's featured over the years. So many rally cars. That's an interesting take. Group B upgrades for trucks. I see what you're getting at. I think you're almost envisioning, I would assume, like a Baja truck or like trophy trucks. That would be cool, yeah. Almost like Gran Turismo 2 race modifiers that turns it into a full-on race truck or something to that effect. Open fenders and giant mud flaps and big off-road tyres and that would be very cool. The part I would don't know about is Group B. I feel that would need its own class because they wouldn't be anywhere near quick enough to keep up with the Group B rally cars, even with more power, because they're just so big and so heavy. But yeah, in theory, I love the idea of something like that. Technically, one of the most badass trucks we could ever have in Gran Turismo is a vehicle which, if I recall correctly, actually beat Gran Turismo's most legendary car in real life. Gran Turismo's most legendary car, I would say, is the Escudo. And yet in real life the Escudo was beaten by a truck. And it was beaten by a Toyota Tacoma. The Pikes Peak Toyota Tacoma, if I recall correctly. And that thing, which looks incredible, that would go perfectly with the return of Pikes Peak if they wanted to bring that back. And that would be a hell of a truck. It's barely a truck, you know, it's only a truck on a technicality. But then again, you could also say that the Suzuki Escudo is an SUV, because it's based on a Suzuki Vitara, or as they call it over there, the Escudo. If you look up Suzuki Vitara on Google, you can see that it turned into the Escudo Pikes Peak, but boy, it don't look like a Pikes Peak Escudo, that's for sure. So technically it's this small, unassuming little 4x4, but they turned into an absolute monster. So it's not outside the realm of possibility to have a crazy truck in there. But yeah, I personally, I would still rather have older trucks because of the cruiser and, you know, enjoyer of tuning and car shows in me, but yeah, either way would be pretty cool. More SUVs as well, because the main reason why the Urus stands out so much is because it's by far the most OP SUV you can get and doesn't really have any rivals, even though in real life there's plenty of cars to rival it. The Aston DBX, even if you go older, my favourite concept car of all time, or I guess my second favourite concept car behind the Cadillac 16, the Spiker D8 that we had in Test Drive Unlimited 2. That thing would potentially destroy the Lamborghini Urus with modifications. It's not going to come to Gran Turismo anytime soon, but yeah, we definitely need more SUVs, or at least in my opinion. Yeah, I do like that option as well. And if you think about it, because for those who are just listening, somebody said about turning road cars into Group 4s. The reason why I think that is more of a legitimate idea than it could initially seem on a technical level is because if you think about it, if you motor swap some of the Group 4s, it changes their eligibility for certain events, or at least it used to. I don't know if it still does. I'm pretty sure it still does. So if it works that way, it should work the other way as well. You should be able to turn a road car into a race car and have it actually feel like that's authentic. And even for someone like me who does the replicas, imagine how fun that would be for me to be able to build you like, you know, some GT4 car replica or something, and it actually becomes one in terms of eligibility. That would be so cool. It would add to that layer of immersion. And here's the reason why I think Polyphony is a little bit short-sighted sometimes, it kind of makes their job easier. Because if you give us, the players, the chance to do that for ourselves, you're kind of saving yourself work. Because if we are creating a car ourselves, it most likely means we're not going to be asking you for one as much. So for example, I don't see many people clamouring for a Lexus LFA Nürburgring edition, despite the fact that many people really like that car. Why aren't they clamouring for it? Because you can turn the LFA into a pretty convincing Nürburgring edition. Why don't we need, really, I mean we do, that's the wrong way of putting it, but why don't you see people clamouring for a C5R Corvette race car? Because as much as we'd like it, for now, you can make a pretty close representation aside from class, and it's not quite as quick, but it's not far off what it would be at the Corvette using the visual upgrades. So being able to build replicas that actually feel legit with that icing on the cake of a class, I think that would go a long way for Polyphony. I think it would quiet down a lot of people who would otherwise be asking for certain other vehicles, and of course the community will always ask for other stuff instead, but you know, that's life. You know, you're a game developer, get used to it. That's always going to happen. But I think that if Polyphony could try to embrace some of these ways of kind of making their own life easier and simultaneously making the community's life better at the same time, for some reason they seem viciously opposed to that idea. It's our way or the highway kind of thing. I've said this one before as well, but it directly ties into that concept of like having, well, no, it doesn't directly tie in, but it's very similar to the concept of turning road cars into race cars. I've said this before, but today I was playing Ride 5 in career mode, and I did a showdown on Daytona, and the route on Daytona was totally different to any of the routes of Daytona in Gran Turismo. And I've said it before, like I said, but Tsukuba, Suzuka, plenty of other tracks have multiple variations. I mean, literally, there's one right there. Just turn right. And Gran Turismo is just, for whatever reason, opposed to having these variations, even when you've already mapped most, if not all, of the track into the game. And some of the most egregious ones are places like Tsukuba, because on Tsukuba, there's no excuse. It is literally a few cones that makes the difference. Tsukuba has at least 3 primary variations. The long full track, which we already have, the short track, and the motorcycle variation. Why don't we have 3 variations then? It's not like it takes a huge amount of extra work to literally just move the cones and change where the barrier is defined. And they've already done that for the Nürburgring with the stupid Taurus layout, or the Spa different way of starting the race, which in my opinion is dumb as hell. Abu Dhabi, as you said, yeah, you've all these different layouts. And the reason why I think that Polyphony is stupid for not doing this isn't because I'm a massive fan of the short layout of Tsukuba, particularly, but because I think if you just step back and think of it from a business perspective, from a workforce perspective, and maximising how efficient your time is, if you consider how long it takes to map, I don't know, CGV or Abu Dhabi into the game, versus how long would it take to make 10 different variations. By the way, there's another one right there, that's Suzuka. That little kink back there, that's the motorcycle variation. Never seen in Gran Turismo. And I'll also show you another slight difference in a second with the motorcycle variation. They could do so many of these variants in less time than like one new track. And yet that would allow you to release an expansion pack, paid or unpaid, or even as part of something like the Power Pack, with like literally a dozen or more instant new variations added to the game. Imagine, for example, if what I just said is what they'd have done for this. Imagine if the Power Pack had come with Suzuka East, Suzuka West, Suzuka motorcycle variation, which is here, that I told you about. That's the motorcycle corner there instead. That would be a colossal selling point. And I don't just mean add it to the Power Pack, I mean you buy the Power Pack and then it releases all of those circuit variations in the main game as well. I think you would have a significant increase in people buying the power pack. And it's clearly about making money at the end of the day. That's why they're charging for it. So you want to earn money, don't you? Well, then earn more. And you don't really have to put much effort into doing it. So it's these weird choices that they make, and I really don't understand it. There might be some colossal thing that I'm not thinking of or just don't know about on the dev side of things, and of course I'm not a game developer, but yeah, and there's the problem, XVA. Like you said, if they're putting all the eggs into the basket of GT8, then okay. But if not, there's no excuse. Here's the problem. They do it every time. It's always the next thing, the next game, the next project. Kaz is so obsessed with the future, the next goal, which is admirable, of course. Being a visionary is not a bad thing, but the problem is, it feels like Kaz needs a wingman. Kaz needs almost a second director, someone who deals with the here and now. And maybe there already is, but whoever that is either not doing their job properly or they are being woefully drowned out, because it's all about the future. It's all about the next. It's all about, oh, we can't quite do this yet, but soon we will. It's all about making Sophie AI even quicker. It's about, we can't do Tourist Trophy yet because there aren't racing rigs that are good enough. Blah, blah, blah. It's always looking to the future. Being a visionary is what gave us Gran Turismo in the first place, and that will always be awesome, and we will always have Kaz, among many others, to thank for that. But it doesn't mean that that will work forever. You can't just be a visionary. A visionary starts to pay the bills, and, more importantly, you can't just keep appealing to new people. You need to satisfy the people that you already have. And to my own downfall, that's actually been the main problem I've had with this channel. I've so consistently tried to keep making the sort of content that will appeal to people who joined this channel 17 years ago that it hurts the channel now. But yeah, I mean, I also don't see Kaz retiring, to be honest. It's so much his baby. And if you think about it, if I asked most of you here in chat, or most people in the Gran Turismo community, what do you know Kaz for? What has Kaz done? We all know what your answer is going to be. And that probably must have, for somebody, especially for an ambitious person, whether you're humble or not, he probably doesn't like that. He probably wants to keep that legacy going for as long as he can, to keep his baby going, because Gran Turismo is his baby. If he steps away from that, well, what else has he got? He's a race driver, on and off it seems, but he's hardly known for that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he never retires. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that how things are done could do with a bit of a refresh. That's all. I think he could do with delegating a bit more. And if he does already delegate, then clearly something else is wrong. Because for every good thing that Gran Turismo does, there's definitely more than a few things that you can say, that was a weird way of doing that, or that could have been done better, or sometimes, that wasn't a good idea, just straight up. 1.9 laps for the fuel, and we're doing well. Oh, not far to go. We're nearly the final half an hour. And I tell you what, even though it was annoying for streaming reasons, at least it meant that today feels like it's going by a bit quicker, rather than the full 6-hour thing. I do, on the same point of circuit variations, I do find it really, really weird as well, and basically put that sentence before literally anything about PD, because everything they do seems weird, but they have added a few variations. Obviously I said some earlier, like the alternate starts for Spa or Nürburgring. They've done some variations for Catalunya, including the pretty underutilised Rallycross course, which is an odd choice for Gran Turismo. Whoa, all the comments being... This is what I said about earlier on. It seems odd where they prioritise adding variations. Because you have variations of Spa that no one asked for. Variations of the Nürburgring that no one asked for, including crazy stuff like Nürburgring Reverse, which we now have. I still haven't even tried that yet. And from what I hear, it seems to be a bit of a mixed bag. A cool idea, but also some people find it annoying. Then variations of Catalunya. Sure, I get it with Catalunya a bit more because it's new, it's fresh. You know, Kaz probably has a bit more interest in that, so he's adding the variations. But then you have something like this, and to me, this is one of the most egregious because Suzuka is such an iconic track, and it's such a core part of Gran Turismo's history for most of the franchise. How on earth do we only have this primary variation and the little side one? How do we not have the variation that is this side of the track? It just doesn't make any sense. I just don't get it. You know, forget about the motorcycle variation, which I would argue is also a pretty good idea. But even without that, it's just consistent, weird choices. And unfortunately, I hate to be, what's the word? Starts with a C. Cynical, that's the one. I hate to be cynical about it, but I don't really see it changing anytime soon. "30 minutes remaining. Trying to think, will I need to pit in again? Possibly not. Because how many laps do we usually get between pits? I can't remember now. Has anyone noticed how many laps it is? Well, I guess based on that it's about 20. So if it is about 20 laps, 2 minutes each, so yeah, I shouldn't need to pit in again. In fact, comfortably, I shouldn't need to pit in again. Cool. And this is definitely a better result than last time, that's for sure. Although, in the grand scheme of things, it kind of worked out for the best, because with the mishap, or no, not the mishap, with the underwhelming finish of 4th, the first time I did this, combined with the fact that I pre-recorded it so the video was kind of boring versus a live stream. Those two things put together meant that this video wouldn't have been here otherwise, and that would have meant I'd have already done my review. And if I'd have already done my review, then that review wouldn't have included choosing your own car or the weekly updates. So it kind of worked out for the best, really. Probably have the lights going on again soon. I think we should be mostly caught up with the chat again now that it's bumped through all of those. I think the comments were basically back up to where they were before. So, hopefully. And we put some good mileage on this car as well, which is nice. Nice to give it some use. Especially successful use. It's kind of funny too, because even though it won't work out this way, I kind of feel like I should get one bonus from last week and one bonus from this week. Because, actually no, I guess not, because you've got to complete a race for the weekly challenge. I was going to say, because I did this race last week and this week. But yeah, it doesn't really work that way because I finished it this week. Oh, there we go. I think these are more comments. Motorcycle variants. Curbs. Yep. I read the top comment and then I read the others, and now I can't remember what that top comment was then. But yeah, the comments are definitely caught up now. "25 minutes. I was supposed to be releasing a review this weekend actually for another e-bike, but between bad weather this week and also I've been sick for the past few days, didn't really work out, so I'm going to have to push that to next week. It's a fun little bike though. It's going to look ridiculous with me on it, that's for sure. It's a little single speed, non-folding, but it's almost like a monkey bike looking thing. But obviously powered, electric powered. Legal in the UK because it does have pedals, but that should be fun. I think it might end up being my favourite one because it's just such a silly looking little thing. And I kind of like the fact that it's a single gear because it reminds me of like BMX. And I do still need to review my Benelli. But as of yet, I haven't gone on any super long journeys. I'm still getting my confidence back with it. I've rode it, I think, about 3 or 4 times now. And it's been fun. I still need to fix the speedo, but I did find that I can use my phone, the GPS, on a magnet holder. So at least I do have a speedo. So now it's just a case of riding it a bit further, getting my confidence up a bit more. And I definitely need to try and ride a bit faster as well. Obviously, keeping that within my my confidence, but and then once I am getting out a bit further, then get some footage and do a beards and bikes review for the first time. Well, for the first time properly in 6 years, even though the e-bikes come under beards and bikes as well. My first motorcycle review in 6 years, which will be very nice. Very nice to be back in the groove. Excuse me. That's another reason actually why I've been considering a big truck, because at the moment it's really cool to have my bike in the back of Bonnie, because I can fit a classic bike in the back of the hearse really nicely. It fits perfectly. But a modern bike would never fit because they're too tall. Whereas with a truck, if you've got some giant dually Ford pickup, you fit a bike in the back of that easy. Sebring to... yeah, that'd be cool, yeah. Yeah, kind of follow a real life calendar. And that would be a cool way of overlapping, because I feel like that would encourage people, because you know, me for example, I love tracks like Sebring or whatever, but I don't know if there's a race going on that weekend because I just don't bother to check. So for existing fans and even more so new fans, it might encourage them to check out the real event, maybe watch it live or something, because they've been, you know, brought, or it's been brought to their attention in the game. So that'd be kind of a cool cross-pollination that would happen there. It would involve more work, and clearly they are assigning their workforce elsewhere within Polyphony, but yeah, very cool idea. I like that idea. If they were to add Sebring, I could imagine that being one of the only other significantly long endurance races that we would get in the Power Pack. Because if you think about it, you got a couple of 24-hour events. I don't know how many other tracks people would actually want to do. low mileage Silvias. Yeah, they do that every so often in a weird kind of way. They kind of revolve through certain cars, and sometimes you'll see it in the Legends dealer in a bunch of different colours. It tends to coincide with seasonal events more often than not. So if you check the weekly seasonals, you'll more often than not find there'll be like a Silvia challenge or something like that that will usually coincide with it. But yeah, I've done it again. I've forgotten what I was talking about. Oh yeah, was I talking about the truck? I thought I was talking about something after the truck. But yeah, fit a motorbike in the back of the truck, definitely. 94mm. Yeah, I'm about the same now as well. Yeah, the only cash I ever spend out now is special projects, or usually the new update cars. And most of the new update cars don't tend to be that expensive. I think the most expensive one we've ever had was the old Merc W196R, which is totally justified in being expensive because, of course, it should be. Which I guess is a car that makes a little bit more of a case for what I said about super old school, like vintage Grand Prix, which is a nice change to have that. I must admit, I'd kind of forgotten that car was in the game. Evo 4 and the MR2. Oh yeah. Yeah, so you're waiting for the mercy of the used dealer. But if you look at it this way, at least you're not waiting for some formerly 10 million credit car that this time around is going to be 20 million in the legendary dealership, which is what happened to a lot of people. If you look back at my reviews for, I want to say it was the McLaren Longtail, and I think maybe the Porsche 911 GT1 as well. I'm pretty sure those have gone up quite a lot on price. I think the McLaren might have actually doubled. I don't like the Haggerty thing. Oh yeah, the 917 as well, yeah. Although I didn't buy the 917 anyway, so it didn't make any difference to me because you win it from, what is it, the special license or the driving missions or something that you win it for, which is a way better way of getting it anyway. I do think that they'll probably keep the Haggerty idea, unfortunately, for the next game. I don't like it. And the reason why I don't like it is because it's a game. You know, I don't need it to feel like real life. I need the car to be, you know, appropriately expensive, but not for it to feel like a gimmick that's just used to draw the game out longer and make you grind for longer, which is how it comes off feeling. I don't recall anyone in the past, and I'm sure there was like 2 people, but the vast majority of people weren't asking, oh, we really need dynamic prices to make these cars more expensive over time and harder to get. No. If you really want to make the cars last longer and make them more like make it feel like more of a challenge and more of a moment when you get the car, do exactly what many of us, including myself, have been saying. Make it a prize vehicle then, instead. Make it so that you cannot buy the car at all and you have to win it. That's much more appropriate, especially if it's something iconic like a Porsche 917. Precisely. That's exactly my stance. It's a game. It's supposed to be escapism. You can make it realistic if you want to, but if I'm playing, you know, Fallout, I don't want to get radiation sickness. If I'm playing COD, I don't want to get shot in the head. If I'm playing Gran Turismo, I don't need to feel like I need to actually take out, you know, a finance option or a loan to buy an in-game car. Yeah, exactly. The manufacturer-specific events in GT4 were awesome. The Selena 7 trophy. I said before, a Ferrari race that unlocks something like, you know, like say an F430 challenge, which would be appropriate. Have something like that, and then when you win the challenge, you unlock like a FXX or something, or like a FXXK or a P4, you know, something like that. Or even, what I would personally prefer is if they use that to also reform the invite system. Because the invite system until now was even worse than the Haggerty collection. And how I would do the invite system is make it as it actually is, which is Ferrari will only sell you certain cars if you're an existing Ferrari owner. Well, okay, then do that in the game. Make it so that you can't buy a LaFerrari unless you've already got a Ferrari. It's not that big of a deal, but still, that means you've got to have a couple of £100 to get yourself a nice Ferrari, and now you're allowed to buy one. Maybe even say you've got to have 5 Ferraris, or whatever. Maybe you've got to have every other Ferrari in the game. But that would still feel more legitimate than just, in my case, quite literally, playing the game for years and never have a single Ferrari invite. Multiple people have said to me that apparently everyone got a Ferrari invite because we had like all the invites at one point. I don't remember that ever happening, and I must have not had the money at the time because I didn't buy it. So, yeah, I've always thought the invites were very, very badly done. And we can only hope that they learn from these things. I'd like to think so. They do learn from some stuff, for sure. But it always seems to be a fairly slow learning curve that takes quite a number of years for Polyphony to do. Polyphony is a big old battleship, but they turn and they move slow because of it. Less than 15 minutes remaining. This is where the stream will crash. Yeah. I don't even do money grinds anymore. I've got so much money now and no use for it. I don't even grind, which, to be honest, I don't miss. So yeah, I just do a couple of weeklies, and generally speaking, I only race to like get footage for vids, you know, like for new car stuff, that kind of thing. Or if there's some new event added, then I'll complete that. There's still a couple of new events that are added in monthly updates that I haven't done yet. I think one of the Super Formula ones I haven't done. But yeah, that's mostly why I race now, or when I race. Yeah, and even in my case, I don't often find that doing the 5 races is even really worth my effort. So I'll usually just do, you know, you do the one, you get your £100 bonus, that's nice. And then over the course of the week, if there's like a bonus weekly limited time trial or something, which that's usually fun to do, then I'll do that. And now I think, well, I've done 2 of them, might as well do 3, another couple of £100, why not? But I very rarely do all 5. Because it's like, okay, if I win some cool car, I've already got all the cars, so I don't need it. And if I win a car that I've already got, I'm just going to sell it, and I've already got the money. So it's just not really worth my time. It's cool for the players that don't know, so I'm not going to critique that too much. But just for me now, then yeah, I'm in a similar boat where I just do a few a week. Tried to push for a bit of a quicker lap and got down into the 159s again, just about. I'm saying about finishing while it's still light outside. It still will be. I do like that in the UK when we start to get our longer days again. Sardinia. I don't recall grinding Sardinia. My grind was always the same. I would always do Le Mans because it's my favourite track. You could use a wide variety of cars to do it with, and pretty good money. I know a lot of people used to love Spa as well, and quite a few people I think love the Tokyo method. Personally, I never really got into the Tokyo one at all. I did Spa a couple of times, but yeah, Le Mans was always my go-to. I would have loved it if there was more to do at Special Stage Route X. There's barely anything to do on that track, and I know most people find it boring, but I like it. We used to have a decent amount to do on the test course at least, like the Wind, for example. It would be nice to have a like the Wind style event, especially if it were a bit more of an endurance, because if you put the fuel on quick, you don't even need to have that many laps for it to feel like an endurance. Because if a car's running at top speed around a track like that, that's what, 17 miles long, you would run out of fuel really quick. Pardon me. It's actually crazy seeing how much Gran Turismo has changed and how much my coverage and gameplay of it has changed. If you compare the birth of the channel, really, when GT6 was around doing mostly Route X tunes, which shows how many people were doing that back then, compared to now, I virtually never drive on Route X anymore. I never race there. I never do online lobbies there. I never really do tunes there, very rarely. I did a few for GT7, but not much at all. It's kind of crazy how that's changed. Yeah, I've heard that the Tokyo one is better per hour, yeah. The Spa one that I did was the hour, and I think, I don't know, it's almost like a psychosomatic thing where sometimes I didn't want to do an hour, whereas Le Mans, I just do it once a day. And what I used to do before the power pack payouts and all that, I used to just do it once a day. And then that was like, what, 825 grand plus your daily bonus. And then I'd just do that once a day between updates. And then by the time the updates come back around, you've got a month's worth of 800 grand a day added up pretty nicely on top of what you already had. And I'd just do it that way. Whereas doing it for an hour, I haven't always got an hour to do it, to do Spa. I don't enjoy Spa as much, it just made more sense. But yeah, never got into the Tokyo one. I remember there was some kind of exploit on Tokyo, was it with a Tomahawk or something, where you could like modify the Tomahawk in such a way that it was allowed in with the point level, or something like that, and it would just destroy everything, which of course they patched. Because we don't want you earning money too quick, got to keep that Haggerty business going strong. I think it's stupid when games patch stuff like that, because it's not hurting anyone. And it's not like new players can't do it either. Just use the exploit if you want to. Oh, interesting. 3 Sardinias in an hour. That's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah, because Le Mans, what? What's Le Mans? I want to say it's... You can do 2 an hour, so like 1.65 mil. So yeah, that's not bad. Kid next door's decided to sing, because of course, sounds like a dying cat. And now he's stopped. We can only hope he heard me. Never mind. The wailing has begun anew. Thankfully the mic doesn't seem to pick it up. I was going to say, I guess technically I could just sit around at the finish line, but not quite. Is actually, yeah, not quite. Because I was going to say, it's saying he's 5 minutes behind. Host a community race or drive the motors. Yeah, that'd be fun. You can't really do it on Suzuka, unfortunately, because of this roadblock. So you literally can't do it. On Tsukuba, you could. But yeah, it's a fun idea. So if I'm 5 minutes ahead, just about now, basically. Yeah, you could do the other corner, yeah. I'm going to stop at the end of this lap, and then we are just going to wait it out, because I've done 172 laps, and who cares about doing 173? I'll let that sweet little V12, well, not so little V12, cool down. Yeah, I know the one you mean when we're getting up to it. The other little turn. And the funny thing is, I say about having them, in motorcycle games, it actually annoys me. I don't like the turn. It annoys me having to slow down for it, but that's not the point, you know? It's having the choice. It's having those extra variations that gives you the spice of life. So this, for example, when you've got the motorcycle variation in here, when you have to slow down with a motorbike and come through, it's just more... It's something different, you know? And obviously with that motorcycle variation, you'd have the barrier across the road to stop you from just cutting. It's not exactly like that would make a massive difference. Yeah, see what I mean? Like just having these extra little, literally like bare minimum effort changes, and yet it gives you an entirely different kind of flow to that section of the track. Because usually that part of the track is when you can just go flat out, which I think is the whole point. That's why they slow the bikes down. Here, of course, is the bigger difference, because here, on the bike route, you drive up there, and then as you come around, it's this super tight version of the corner instead. And again, much tougher on the bike variation. And yeah, I know I could do more, but I'm not gonna. Boop. Modded. I mean, yeah, you probably could mod it, and it's such a basic mod, really, isn't it? All you'd need, aside from the game knowing the different layout, all you'd need, because otherwise the AI would just slam into the barrier, is you'd need to like isolate the asset of the barrier and like put one there, and then I would imagine most of the work would be probably changing how the game reacts to that change of layout, because everything else, yeah, it'd be more fun for slower cars. Have stuff like Samba buses and that going around it. But yeah, although this is going to be probably a fairly small stream, I haven't checked how many people are watching, but it's probably like 20 if we're lucky, probably less. I mean, you're saying about people doing this in real life, it's kind of what he did in Ford v Ferrari, isn't it? I feel like that's the kind of thing they do back in the day, not so much anymore. Knowing the rules and how stupid they are these days, they'd probably penalise you for doing it and showboating and take the win away. But even though we've got so few people watching, this is a significant moment. Not only because I'm finally winning the Suzuka event, not only because I'm finally getting the full 1,000 stars. Watch us have a power cut as I'm saying this. But that's it. That's the power pack. We'll be done. And then on Monday, I'm going to schedule the video to come out in the evening, 7 PM UK, giving my overarching review of the power pack, and more importantly, who I think it's best for and who's going to get the most out of it. But yeah, The video won't quite be over when the race ends because I do want to at least show on screen the full 1,000 stars because that will look pretty cool. But yeah, it's been a fun ride. It's been a very fun ride doing the Let's Play. And it spanned quite a lot of time as well, over a number of months. In fact, when was the first? Well, the review's technically already done, but I did mention exactly what you were just saying. 5 months ago, I did episode 1. We first started the Let's Play on 7th of December, 2025. So yeah, this series has spanned a good while. Good while. An appropriate length, I would say, of time. As my battered but victorious car sits here waiting for its parade lap. Such a long and grueling race. Thank you, Barbara. 3 mil, pole position, fastest lap. You bet your ass it was. And yeah, very nice, very nice. 100 grand. That's what I was really after. But yeah, 5 months. It's been a good run. Oh, that's interesting. So it splits the replay as well. I don't think I'll save the replay. I don't think I really... you know what? Maybe I will. Because now that I've said I won't need it, I probably will. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. Now let's check out those nice juicy stars. Yeah. I can buy an LFA or not the engine swap for the LFA. And there we are. 1,000 stars, 50 races, 51, 37 rewards, and a 1 on everything. Very nice. That is exactly what I wanted. And a little bit of the power pack done as well. Awesome. Well, to those who join me just for this race, thanks for joining. To those who have followed the whole power pack, or maybe you just check out the live streams for the endurance races, thank you for joining me for those, especially the 24-hour ones. And yeah, it's been fun. Some definitely more fun than others, but yeah, this will, once it's processed, join its place in the playlist if you want to watch it again in future, or if you want to binge watch all of them. And like I said, on Monday, I'll be releasing that mini review, condensing my entire thoughts, which is actually a segment from the first part of this stream. And yeah, see you then. Thanks for watching, and yeah, see you next time. And I'm going to end the stream graciously, now that I've already said goodbye. Goodbye!